Welcome back to this channel. This is Trinity Storm, and you are watching second part of What If Kakashi merged with his younger self. If you enjoy this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Now, wasting no time, let's start the story.
The mission was intended to be a standard C-ranked escort. After 6 months of only D-ranked missions involving the daimyo's wife's missing cat, Takahari, Sensei finally allowed them to leave Kumo and take on a mission guarding some merchants on their way to Earth Country. The job was supposed to have been simple. Peace with Konoha was still in place, bandits were at an all-time low, and Takahari Sensei claimed that the only renegade samurai who were foolish enough to challenge a Kumo Junin were those who were particularly simple to eliminate. They were not expected to face many difficulties. Perhaps a broken cart wheel or an occasional thief. The mission was supposed to be simple and safe. Megumi and her teammate had been debating the order in which they would take the watches for the evening at one point. A rusty dagger emerged from her chest the next. Her hand, slick with her own blood, trembled as she touched the handle. Megumi looked up into a demon's ravenous, blood-stained red eyes. Before she could even scream, he reached for her throat. Kakashi transformed the vapor in the air into water by twisting his bloody hands into a quick series of seals while dragging chakra up from hidden reserves. He was surrounded by steam that rose hot and swirled in amazing shapes before coiling up around the bodies that were on the ground and forming untidy water puddles. Tenzo was scattering rusty old senbon on the ground, throwing a few over his shoulder occasionally toward the bodies, when he looked up. Inquiringly, "I haven't seen that one before," he said. Kakashi gave a shrug. After Team 7 broke up, he had picked it up in a solo mission in Water Country. He had no special instinct for self-preservation in a waist-high stack of S-ranked missions that Tsunade wanted him to finish. He remarked nonchalantly, "Have to make it look as real as possible. We're supposed to make it look like a missing nin from Kiri did this." Genma remarked, "These look familiar," as she carefully selected a number of shuriken and kunai from a battered leather pouch. "Definitely the real thing from Kiri. They even have the canoe stamped onto it and everything. Old, which is even better." Kakashi rolled his shoulders and cracked his knuckles, feeling the pain of chakra exhaustion already seeping into his bones. "Yamanaka was very obliging when I went to him for some supplies. We're using Kakeru's weapons. His chakra reserves were only half as large as they were normally, and his body wasn't accustomed to the stress he placed on his 30-year-old self." Tenzo said, "Useful," but his sidelong glance at Kakashi said more than words could express. Like a green chunin who hadn't even broken in his flak vest and was hunched over from exhaustion on his first B-rank mission, the little brat was probably afraid he was going to pass out at any moment. Kakashi nodded and straightened his back. "Very," he said. Raida said, "Merchants are all tied up," as he silently fell from a tree branch. "Genjutsu's got them all addled and I've got them hanging from a 20-footer. They'll have a shock when they wake up. I'll take care of them," Kakashi declared, ignoring Genma's disbelieving glance. "Just finish the bodies, we don't want Kumo coming after us along with Yua." Stooping carefully over one of the Kumo genin, Genma said, "Mission's barely started and you're already half dead on your feet, Captain," pulling tight with a thread of wire around her neck. Kakashi averted his gaze and clenched his stomach. He said curtly, "Just finish the job," and vanished into the darkness. It was going to be a very long 2 months away from his pack, Kakashi thought quietly. The chakra signature was what identified him even before the name. The village was protected simply by Kushina's presence, a stunning blue flame spiraling through her stomach with the same limitless energy. Makoto grinned, relieved that her friend was still alive, as a much smaller and more animated version of it bobbed its way through her home. Makoto said, "Yes, Naruto-chan," and set down her sewing, relishing the startled spike in his chakra. "How do you know it was me?" Kakashi.ni.san and Tenzo always know, but that's because they're ninja. "Are you a ninja too, Makoto.san?" Naruto asked, his father's eyes shining brightly and with curiosity. Makoto whispered, "I'm a mother," and then she reached out and gently cupped Naruto's face. "We always know. Now, what is it? Do you need something from me?" The young boy's face furrowed, his whiskers crinkling, and he used his foot to idly draw patterns on the floor. He exhaled sharply and said, Well, I promised Sakura I would play with her today." His face flushed. Makoto had extensive experience identifying the language of 6-year-olds from raising 2 boys and observing innumerable other Uchiha infants. "Sakura?" inquired Makoto. "Is she a friend from the temple school?" Naruto gave an enthusiastic nod, and a dazzling smile appeared on his face. We practice kunai throwing and stuff and we played with Ryu. Chan and she comes over lots but then I promised to play with her today. But now Kakashi.ni isn't here but I still want to play and with Sasuke too. Makoto gave Naruto's request careful thought. Do you know where she lives? With his blonde hair flying in the air, Naruto shook his head. He said, nah. With a slightly drooping smile. Kakashi.ni.san knows and he walks us over to drop her off but I forgot where. After what felt like just a heartbeat, Itachi, who had been born a wise old man in a baby's body, had left her side. At the age of 11, he was already a rising chunin and a member of Anbu. Soon to leave her for the academy in a world where kids were taught how to kill on command, Sasuke was already 6 years old. Her kids, however, softened and appeared more like their age when they were around Naruto. They played and laughed, temporarily forgetting the worries of the outside world. A great sense of shame welled up in Makoto's chest. She had been a good friend, but she conveniently forgot that the demon brat had her best friend's bright life in the eyes of the Yondaime by leaving her friend's child on the streets. Thinking of Kushina's child as lost and killed alongside his parents had been simpler. Makoto silently blessed Kakashi and the good fortune that brought him and the Uchiha together, as he had done previously. Makoto finally said, I think I can fix that, and got to her feet, wiping the dust from her knees. Would you do me a favor and go get ready with Sasuke? Chan? We're going out, Naruto exclaimed, skipping around on his feet. Makoto grinned as she ran her hand through Naruto's hair and said, remember your jackets because it's cold outside. Naruto grinned at her and used his small hands, whose skin was unbelievably soft and warm, to grab her wrist. He remarked, you're the best, Makoto.san, as his blue eyes became joyful slits. Makoto blinked back hot tears as her breath caught in her throat. Makoto stopped and swallowed, trying to find the Uchiha calm that her mother had instilled in her from birth. Why? Why don't you call me aunt instead, Naruto? Chan. Like. Naruto gazed up at her while continuing to hold her arm in those tiny hands, his eyes appearing unnaturally large. Like family, he said in a barely audible whisper. Makoto said, you already have a brother, with a slight crack in her voice. And a senpai. I think it's time you had an aunt, don't you? Naruto said, I'd like that, in that minuscule voice. Aunt Makoto. Makoto dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around his slender shoulders, drawing his small body close to her chest. She kissed Naruto's crown tenderly, barely noticing the big wet patch that had grown on the front of her apron. She cried and said, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, hoping that her deceased friends and the boy she had believed dead would return to life and be safe in her arms. Naruto sniffed and used the sleeve of his dirty shirt to wipe away his own tears and snot. Done. Cry, Makoto.oba, he said. Done, be sad. Makoto gently corrected him, I'm not sad, and brushed Naruto's hair back from his face while wiping his face with the hem of her clean apron. I'm crying because I'm happy that you're here. Naruto said, no one's ever cried for me before, and cautiously touched Makoto's moist face, as though he was worried that this was all a dream. They just throw stuff and shout and stuff. Not anymore, vowed Makoto adamantly, not while I'm around. Sakura dropped her book and bounded out of her room when the doorbell rang, clattering down the stairs with a speed that even Naruto would have been impressed with. When Mama yelled, no running in the house, Sakura was already at the door, pulling impatiently at the deadbolt that was only a few inches away. Mama reminded her, we need to check who's here first, and she ignored Sakura's pout as she peered through the small seeing hole in the top of the door. Mama squinted into the small hole and brushed her dark hair back from her face, asking, oh. Is Hitaki.san married? No, Sakura muttered sullenly as she kicked her foot at the door. Course not, he's Kakashi.ni.san, he's not old and stuff. Mama muttered, strange, but she unlocked the door, and Sakura threw herself face first, slamming into her best friend in the world. Ow. Sakura pondered Naruto's hair color change to black and his eyes' transformation before realizing it. She yelled, you're not Naruto, and then blushed as she scurried away from the Naruto she had knocked to the ground. Sakura was on the verge of punching Naruto when he laughed, what are ya, blind? However, Mama was standing next to her and was presumably already upset that she had pushed the Naruto to the ground. When Mama placed her hand on Sakura's shoulder, she didn't sound particularly pleased. Instead, Sakura said, I'm not blind, sticking her tongue out. Mama bowed deeply and said, I'm so sorry, in that mature voice. I thought I had raised my daughter to be better than this, but it seems that I still have much to teach her. You have my sincerest apologies, ma'am. as Mama always instructed Sakura to do. The attractive woman beside Naruto bowed and covered her mouth with her hand. "Oh, there was no harm done," she said with a laugh. She resembled one of the stunning women who were constantly creating flower vases in Mama's magazines, with the most gorgeous black hair and the largest eyes. Not. Naruto picked himself up off the ground and stuck his nose up in the air, just like Amy does whenever she has a new doll and wants to show it off. "I'm Sasuke," he sniffed. "And I bet you can't even see it all if you think I look like him." The attractive woman said, "Sasuke," in a mature tone before bowing once more. "My apologies, Haruno-san. It seems my son has manners to learn as well." Hitaki Kakashi asked us to look after Naruto while he was away for a mission in Naruto. Chan mentioned that there was a play date arranged beforehand. "I hope you don't mind that my son is here as well, Haruno-san." "Oh no." Mama's hand gripped her shoulder tightly, and she widened the door. "Of course not." When the attractive woman said, "Uchiha Mikoto," Sakura's heart pounded in her chest. Uchiha. They had the best shinobi and were one of the village's largest and most powerful ninja clans. Many of them were also police officers. Sakura had seen them in the market, and her father used to tell her as a child that the large, intimidating Uchiha policemen would take bad girls away. Mama fluttered and stepped back from the door, dragging Sakura in as she ushered in Naruto, Naruto, Sasuke, and attractive Uchiha-san. Oh, Uchiha-san. Please come in." "Oh my goodness," she said. "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to make you wait outside, and of course, you must stay for tea while the children play in the yard outside." When Sakura had her snack time after school, the kind Uchiha woman said, it was no trouble, and every move she made seemed so light and gentle, as if she were one of those angels from the TV dramas Mama watched. "You have a beautiful home." Mama blushed and bowed once more. "Oh, the place is a mess. We've only moved here a few months ago for my husband's job and I still haven't properly unpacked." As Uchiha-san, Naruto, and not Naruto, Sasuke put on their house shoes, Sakura shifted restlessly. She tugged at Mama's dress and whispered, "Can we go now? Please, Mama, please please please." "Not now." Mama retorted in a stern and fierce voice. "We have very important guests here." Uchiha-san said, "I'm sure the children would rather play instead," and Sakura blushed. Mama would be furious that the woman had overheard her say such offensive things. I'm sure they don't want to listen to their mothers drink tea and gossip about the village. Mother said, "Oh well, if you think so," with some hesitancy. "Only in the yard, you mustn't go anywhere else and straight back inside when I call for you." Sakura grinned and hurried to Naruto's side, grabbing her playing shoes in one hand and his ninja sandals in the other. "Thank you, Mama," she exclaimed. When she said, "We'll be extra good," she emphasized to Naruto and not Naruto. "Sasuke, follow me," and made sure to go extra slowly and cautiously to the back of the house so Mama wouldn't have to scold her for running inside. Naruto exclaimed, "You do have a nice house," as he took in the new, squeaky hardwood floors and the paintings Papa had created on the walls. Sakura wanted to stomp on his foot, but she was a little too afraid. "So not as nice as my house," said not Naruto. Sasuke in that dumb Amy voice. Fortunately, Naruto was with her, and he quickly punched not Naruto. Sasuke on her behalf. "Sasuke," Naruto said, placing his hands on his hips. "Don't be stupid. Sakura's my friend, so stop being mean to her." Not Naruto said, "Whatever," but Sakura couldn't help but smile as she escorted them to the back of the house's yard door. "House shoes go here," she said, indicating the mat before the sliding glass doors, "and we can put on our playing shoes in the yard." "All right." Naruto gave a fist pump. "Wait till you see the cool new toy Kakashi.ni.san made. It's the bestest game in the world ever." When he put on his own ninja sandals, even Naruto sounded excited. "It's not a toy, it's exploding seals," he said. "Like chakra exploding tags?" Sakura inquired, attempting to ignore the fact that she was the only one with stupid, everyday shoes and that Sasuke and Naruto both wore ninja sandals. "I read about them, I thought only ninja could use them?" Naruto whispered, "You'll see," and yanked the door open. It was similar to tag, but superior. Sakura adored the game, which combined elements of tag, shugi, ninjas, and pirates into a massive ink SP lotting game. Her finger smeared the release mark as she slammed a tag she had taken out of her pocket onto the ground. Sakura jumped away as a whole cloud of black smoke burst in front of her, relishing the way Sasuke yelled that he would harm her and Naruto screamed like a baby. The only thing left to do was wait. With a tag in hand, Sakura listened to the loud voices while perched on the edge of the smoke cloud. Sasuke seemed to be pushing his way out to the edge, but Naruto was still coughing and yelling in the center. Sakura could hear coughing noises coming from her left, but he had gone completely silent. She got to her feet, took her final tag out of her pocket, and waited for Sasuke to emerge from the inky smoke cloud. Sakura decided she would never forget the expression on his face when she slapped the tag onto his forehead. Sasuke grudgingly said, "You're pretty okay for a girl," while he was eating a cookie that Mama had prepared for snack time yesterday. "She's more than okay," Naruto exclaimed, scattering crumbs all over the place. "Sakura-chan knows everything and she's the coolest cause we're friends." Even though Sasuke occasionally sounded like Amy, Sakura quietly thought that he was also Naruto's friend while she nibbled on her cookie. She uttered the words, "If we're both Naruto's friends," with some hesitation. "Maybe we could be friends too?" Sasuke lifted his cookie and looked up. He said, "I guess," and Sakura smiled back at him. After saying, "I have two friends now," Naruto used the back of his hand to rub his eyes. "I've never had so many friends before," he said in a shaky, squeaky voice that sounded like he was about to cry. Sakura took a swallow. She said, "Me neither," in a very low voice. She had never been liked by anyone before Naruto, who constantly tore up her books and called her crude names about her forehead. She now had play dates and had the opportunity to sit next to a friend at school, share lunch, and discuss how dull class was. She could now make new friends and meet new people while playing cool ninja games. Sasuke pushed a cookie into his mouth and turned away. Then he muttered, "I have my Aniki and cousins and stuff." Sakura said right away, "That's family. You have a mama and a papa and brothers and stuff, but that's different. We're friends." Naruto said solemnly, "Best friends," and extended his hand. Sakura placed her hand on top of it, evoking the samurai warriors from the TV cartoon she had watched, each of whom was a different rainbow color. They all smiled at one another when Sasuke placed his hand on top of that after a brief pause. Naruto stated solemnly, "We have to promise to help each other out and stuff because that's what friends do, like we're family for each other." Sakura nearly jumped when Sasuke said, "I promise," taken aback that he had spoken first. That implied that Naruto and Sasuke would both assist her, and she would need to reciprocate. Sakura closed her eyes and recalled how Naruto had lifted Amy off the ground after punching her in the face. "The firm, I promise too," Sakura said. Her voice was as strong and fierce as she could manage. "I'll hurt anyone who ever tries to make fun of you guys," she said. Naruto yelled, "It's the promise of a lifetime," and rushed at them, slamming them into the ground with his embrace. Sasuke yelled, "Get off me, stupid," but didn't bother to push Naruto away. Sakura laughed, feeling so happy that she thought she might burst like one of the exploding seal tags. Danzo said, "You look not like you, with a bird like tilt to his head." Dryly, Kakashi accepted the towel the younger man handed him and rubbed his dyed hair vigorously. "I think that's the whole point of going incognito," he said. To conceal the presence of his Sharingan, he had replaced his headband, which was securely stored in a containment scroll, along with his uniform and ninjatoa with an eye patch that had a chakra seal sewn onto the inside. The borrowed merchant's clothes were too big at the shoulders and too short at the leg, but for the time being there was nothing to be done about it. Later that evening, he would need to ask Raida to do some mending. Danzo had parted his messy brown hair neatly at the side and combed it out. He followed his older brother into the family business, looking like any other teenage boy in a loose fitting lightning shirt and slacks. After saying, "Relax your stance," Kakashi threw the towel back at him, splattering it with brown. "You're supposed to be a civilian, not a killer." Tenzu's eyes narrowed slightly as he caught it with ease. "You're one to talk, Captain." With a boneless shrug, Kakashi walked to the campfire and nodded to Genma and Raida. Clad as his cousin and manservant, respectively, they were comfortably resting on the sleeping bags they had stolen from the merchants. Raida straightened slightly and said, "Gruel's almost done, sir," while Kakashi sat on his haunches beside him and warmed his icy hands in front of the fire. "Saved it before the idiot over there overcooked it because he was too busy braiding his hair into a fancy tail." Genma smiled, looking odd without his usual senbon hanging from his lips. "Some of us were blessed with good looks," he said. "It's only right that I should take the time to make myself look nice for the ladies." Kakashi flexed his fingers and ran them through some warm-up exercises before asking, "Travel papers?" Comparing his ceiling speed to where he'd had it before, it was dreadfully slow. He worked through the entire sequence in a good minute, and he suppressed a frown. He would have to be more selective about what he allowed to show on his face if he didn't have a mask to hide his emotions. He repeatedly performed the sequences, fighting the urge to lift his neckline and bury his chin in his chest. Raida remarked, "All doctored up to match our faces. You're looking at a new man," as she observed Kakashi's hands with a modicum of curiosity. "Sato Kenichi at your service, master." Genma inserted, "Watanabe Riku," languidly. "Your experienced and much more handsome older cousin, guiding you in the fine Watanabe tradition of selling Lightning Country textiles." "Watanabe Ryu," Tenzo said softly as he took a seat beside Genma. "I believe that I'm to be your younger brother, Captain." Kakashi said, "Which leaves me Watanabe Ichiro," as his hands instinctively went through the seals for Chidori. Mid-sequence, he halted and made himself change to a new jutsu. The unique mark that Chidori left was connected to Konoha's Anbu and would serve as yet another piece of evidence linking the village to the crime. It would be safer to use earth justice. Tenzo said, "The merchants have been taken care of," with a shadowed face. "Good," was Kakashi's slow, deep breath. "We'll have a good week of travel ahead of us before we hit one of the border posts and ask them for entrance into Iwa. It should give us more than enough time to adjust to our cover and gather intel on the mark. Jutsu use is forbidden from here on out until we hit the village unless it's an emergency." Kakashi shook his head as Tenzo opened his mouth. "Especially you. Mokuton's a dead giveaway for Konoha. Besides, it's been high time that you learned how to act like a civilian." Tenzo said stiffly, "I know the basics," and Raida gave a rough laugh. "Kid," Raida sighed, "that shit they teach in the academy is worth next to nothing. Masking your chakra's fine and easy enough, but you've gotta work on your stance, your reflexes. Gotta walk the walk, talk the talk and pray that some ninja doesn't figure out that you're actually more than what you seem." Genma's mouth twitched as if he were chewing on an invisible senbon. "It doesn't matter if you're more powerful or if you can beat him in a fight. Your life isn't at stake here. The integrity of the mission is. One person knows and the entire treaty between Iwa and Konoha goes up in flames." "I can do this," Tenzo obstinately declared. "Of course we can," Genma said with a smile. "Who the hell do you think we are?" Raida's comment, "Only the best squad in the entire corps," was precise. Delta Squad, captained by the finest operative to ever serve the village. "Me," deadpan Kakashi said. There was a long pause while all three of his subordinates gazed at Kakashi with the same terrified expressions. "What?" he asked, resisting the impulse to put his hands over his face. He detected their apprehension and fear. The only person foolish or courageous enough to speak up was Genma, who said weakly, You just made a joke, sir." Raida said, "You never make jokes," in a quiet voice. "You tell us to stop joking, sir." In his chest, Kakashi tucked his chin. The difference that 10 years could make was astounding. He had forgotten how much he had changed since leaving the corps, adopting the traditional flak vest and erotic literature in place of the bone, white armor and mask. 20-year-old Kakashi, burdened by the burden of old ghosts and a crippling sense of guilt, was only aware of the mission and the long hours spent at the memorial. His mind was too scared and his heart too broken to deal with another Obito or Rin, so he had kept his teammates at a safe distance. Kakashi had only become closer to all three of his former teammates after he had left. After saying, "I guess you just haven't been listening hard enough," Kakashi made the decision to conduct himself better as captain this time. Raida said, "Another one," and the little color that was left in his cheeks vanished in an instant. Genma remarked astutely, "You don't look surprised," glaring at Tenzo, who appeared somewhat startled by the unexpected attention. Tenzo said, and shot Kakashi a furious glance. Ignoring it with joy, Kakashi tossed his priceless little kohai to the sharks. Tenzo hurriedly asked, "Captain's had a peaceful retirement?" Rather than responding to Genma, "Maybe he's taken up telling jokes as a hobby." Kakashi added, "I thought I'd try new things in my old age," and Tenzo gave him a thankful glance. Genma exclaimed excitedly, "Speaking of new things in retirement, rumor is you've gotten domestic, Captain." Kakashi suppressed a moan. He ought to have realized that his choice to adopt Naruto as his ward would have given the Anbu rumor mill a field day. A vague murmur, "New things, new hobbies, he's a good boy." Raida said, "Never thought of you as a parental figure," as he thoughtfully rubbed his chin. "He's that boy, isn't he?" "So what if he is?" Tenzo asked somewhat angrily, and Kakashi's eyes widened as he turned to face the younger boy. Even at the young age of 6, Naruto appeared to have been able to use his friendship magic on Tenzo. He's a good kid and he doesn't deserve what the villagers are saying about him. The Yondaime chose him to save the village. "Yeah, by holding a demonic force in his stomach that killed hundreds of shinobi," Genma said. He shrugged and said, "Look, I know it's not the kid's fault but still makes me uncomfortable as hell to think about." Tenzo firmly stated, "Naruto isn't the Kyuubi," and Kakashi couldn't help but smile as his pride overflowed his chest. His pack was good. Raida's eyes were sharp as she asked, "Why'd you leave him anyway? I mean, you did adopt him, right? And you're technically off Anbu active duty rosters." Kakashi stared at the flickering embers of the campfire for a long time, thinking about Raida's question. Why had he arrived? Even though it was unlikely, there was a chance the team could succeed without him. It turned out that Danzo, who was undoubtedly alarmed by Kakashi's unexpected entry into the council and his alliance with the Uchiha, had taken this action to strip Anbu of its power. But even without Delta Squad, he could have begun anew. The commander, Azuki's squad, and a few others he could rely on were still present. Fighting Danzo would have been difficult, and Root would undoubtedly develop to take Delta's place. He had removed himself from the council by leaving the village, left Naruto vulnerable to a man who was busy plotting a coup against the Hokage, and sent himself on a potentially fatal mission to Iwa in the hopes that the mission's successful completion would give him leverage over a power-crazed councilman. If it was successful, which was extremely unlikely, but still more likely than if his team had been without him, he would have hard proof against Danzo to show the council and the Hokage. Otherwise, Danzo would become more powerful and Konoha would be at war. Kakashi remarked, "Because you're my team, and Danzo's not going to send you on a suicidal mission without me to save your collective asses." Upon observing the three stern faces in front of him, Kakashi came to terms with the fact that they had been packed from the start and not Obito, Rin, or Sensei, but packed nonetheless. He would have to focus on the people in front of him and have faith that Team 7 would be fine without him. "You know," Raida said in a somewhat gruff voice, "I think that's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me." Genma punched his teammate's shoulder and remarked, "Wow, you've led a pretty pathetic life, Raida," but even he appeared a little sentimental. Tenzo said softly, "I'd have to agree," but his dark eyes were proud as he looked up at Kakashi. Kakashi's chest constricted as he turned away. No matter what, he would bring them all back alive. He had made a self-promise to do so. Sarutobi said, "Read me that list over again and slowly, in a tone that did not tolerate any opposition. The active duty roster, subsection C." "Yes, sir," the Chunin replied. Sarutobi assumed that the Chunin's name was Ren, and he was serving in the administrative bureau while his ribs recovered from his most recent B-ranked mission abroad. His parents owned a great Main Street ramen shop, and he was a good boy. Yamamoto Hanako, Jin, Azuki Yugo, Shiranui Genma, Namiyashi Raida, Suzuki Saburo, Sato Kaide, Hitaki Kakashi. Sarutobi scowled and threaded his fingers together, saying, "You may stop. Why is Hitaki Kakashi on the active duty roster?" He held up the scroll into the light, and Ren squinted at it after adjusting his glasses. "I think this is where it says so." The Chunin scowled. "The notation has him on a classified mission, sir. Should I pull up his file for you, Hokage Sama?" Sarutobi said, "Please," as he watched the Chunin hurry out of his office while holding a scroll in the bend of his elbow. Hitaki Kakashi was supposed to be taking care of Uzumaki Naruto, but what was he doing abroad on a classified mission? Sarutobi thought about what he could do. He didn't remember debriefing Kakashi-kun for one, and the mission would undoubtedly come directly from his desk on a classified mission abroad. Additionally, he would have to personally approve any requests for additional staff. Which implied with a snap of his fingers, Sarutobi lit his pipe and took a deep breath, the smoke rising in his chest. Once more, Danzo was interfering. It appears that Delta Squad was sent overseas for duty, most likely on an assassination mission. If Kakashi had disobeyed the Hokage's explicit orders and left the country with his team. Ren came back holding a thin file, appearing a little hurt as a cloud of smoke drifted in his direction. "I brought the most recent one, Hokage Sama." It seemed prudent considering his files take up an entire cabinet. Sarutobi said, "Very prudent," and took the file. "You may leave now, Ren-san. We shall finish the roster arrangements later." After a brief bow and a silent expression of gratitude, Sarutobi was left by himself with his pipe, young Kakashi's file, and his thoughts. He opened it with wrinkled hands and looked at the seemingly innocent-looking paper on top. It was a copy of a processed request of Form 36B. Asking Kakashi for a classified mission, with the censors omitting almost all of the information except for Kakashi's name and the date. In Stone Country, Shinzi pox is common, and there was a brief note requesting 4 vials of vaccine. 3 days ago, it was dated. Form 36B. as was only ever used in combination with Enbu. Sarutobi blew out a stream of smoke from his nose while leaning back in his chair and clamping his teeth down on the stem of his pipe. Hitaki Kakashi was on a classified mission abroad. As a special non-Enbu associate, he was asked. Most likely, Delta Squad was with him on the trip. Naruto was left in the village by him. Arakaki always made sure to keep him informed about any missions his corps was sent on, even when Delta Squad was abroad on a mission he was unaware of, meaning that the commander or Danzo had approved it. Thus, Danzo was left logically. The way the pieces were coming together didn't sit well with Sarutobi. He silently cursed Minato for being a reckless, selfless hero Hokage while rubbing his temples with weary hands. It relieved the headaches on some days. Even cursing the name of his deceased successor seemed to be useless today. Orochimaru, Danzo, Naruto. On certain days, he seemed to be consumed by thoughts of his mistakes. He believed he was instructing his son, his successor, a prodigy. It turned out that he was actually teaching his prize student how to be a traitor and a mass murderer. During the Third Shinobi War, he allowed Root to run amok because he was too preoccupied with winning the battle. After it was over, he believed he had put an end to it, but Danzo was too cunning and moved his agents farther into the shadows. Now that he and his team had been sent on an enigmatic mission far from the village's safety, Kakashi was enmeshed in that tangled mess. Stay away from Naruto. He ought to have realized that Kakashi's appointment to the council would have angered Danzo. Sarutobi flared his chakra and opened his eyes. In a matter of seconds, a guard appeared before him, bowing his head. Find out where Uzumaki Naruto is staying in the village. Observe but do not intrude unless he is in danger. Report back to me as soon as possible. With a profound nod, the guard vanished into the darkness. Sarutobi sighed and set his pipe down on his desk. He was growing too old to do this any longer. The whole room erupted at the knock on the door, with several faces from Sharingan flashing in. Shisui was already forming seals to cover the entire room in a heavy genjutsu, while Aya was bristling with kunai. In order to check the presence hovering just outside the room, Itachi lifted a hand and cocked his head. Calmly, hold, he said. With his Sharingan's tomo whirling languidly, he rose from the table and walked toward the door. He bowed deeply as he opened the door, his ponytail swinging in time. She said, "Hello, Mother, Itachi." Makoto Uchiha grinned. "I apologize for frightening you," she said softly. "But I didn't want to give away my presence." Itachi came back and stood aside to allow his mother to enter the small space, allowing everyone to see his deactivated eyes. "It was well thought of you," he said. Shisui said, "Makoto.oba.san," and gingerly got to his feet. Itachi observed that his chakra was flowing normally after he released his prepared genjutsu. "I didn't realize that." Shisui paused, swallowing as she said. "I am a little old," his mother said, and she moved into a corner of the room and sat down elegantly beside Aya. "I'm sorry dear, but there's hardly enough room to breathe in here." Aya stumbled, "Please, Makoto. Sama," and gave up her cushion for the elderly woman, a long, forgotten kunai. Itachi acknowledged that the shinobi in this room were generally very young, with Kaide being the oldest at 23 and Itachi himself being the youngest. With a nervous expression, Kenji swallowed. "I don't mean to be rude, Makoto Sama, but..." As a civilian, he lacked the training necessary to conceal his feelings. Do they know?" "Oh no," says Mother calmly. "You've been very careful, keeping quiet and changing meeting times in places like this. It took me a while to follow Itachi-kun, what with all the false trails and doubling back he did." Itachi sat down at his place once more and asked, "How did you know?" Mother said, "You're my son," and patted Itachi's hand. "How could I not know that you're working on a seditious plan to go against the elders and your father? I just thought it was time that I joined you. Not all of us old people like the plan, you know." "But the clan head's word is law," Shisui muttered behind his back. "We could rightly be tried and executed under clan law or stripped of our name and heritage." "I know," Mother muttered. "Or not grow up at all, as the council executed Sasuke for being associated with a treasonous clan. But I can no longer watch and see this continue. It will ruin the Uchiha and it will ruin the village. I will not have Sasuke grow up in a world where the Uchiha have ruined the village." Mother went on, "We've been entrusted with the care of Uzumaki Naruto," and the room erupted in applause. But he's..." Aya took a sharp breath. Calmly Itachi said, "The container for the Kyuubi, a 6-year-old boy chosen by the Yondaime Hokage who has a demon sealed inside of him to protect the village." With firmness, Mother stated, It is an honor to care for him. Without him, the village would be but ash in the wind, and we dishonor the Yondaime's sacrifice to think otherwise. And he's also a very sweet boy." With an eyebrow raised, Shisui questioned, "And the Hokage trusts us, the Uchiha, with him?" "As I recall, many blamed us for the attack, accusing us of controlling the fox into attacking Konoha." The moment Kaide said, "Hitaki Kakashi does," the room fell silent. "I was standing guard on the day they came for dinner with Fugaku Sama." With a furrowed brow, Kenji stated, "So the rumors are true. Hitaki-san has taken custody of the boy and reclaimed his seat on the council. It does mean that the clan will be under greater scrutiny than before," Itachi acknowledged, his mind spinning. "Kakashi Senpai was incredibly astute. It's a test. If we can use this time to show the council and the Hokage what the village means to the Uchiha," muttered quietly, "perhaps the elders and my husband will also realize what the Uchiha means to the village. Already Hitaki has moved to show that it stands with the Uchiha against Danzo." "We don't have much time," Shisui stated somberly, his fists clenched. "The elders are growing restless and angry." Aya added, "Then we'll just have to work harder," in a resolute tone. "We have to save the clan." With her hands clasped together in her lap, Mother prayed, "Amaterasu bless us and give us strength, keep my brother safe. Amaterasu, this lowly one begs you," Itachi said in a silent prayer to the goddess. "The moon has come out, oh, the moon has come out, heave ho. Over the coal mine the moon has come out." Ichiru's head was automatically bobbing in time with the song that Kenichi was singing in his rich baritone as he absently scratched his nose. The man's sword arm was even better during the long nights, and he had a nice voice and good company while traveling. Ryu's dark eyes were thoughtful as he said, "I didn't know Kenichi-san could sing," in a queer voice. Ichiro gave his younger brother an elbow to the ribs and rolled his eyes at him. "You've heard him around the warehouse, helping father move and guard the silk from tea country. Oh wait. I forgot, you're always hiding out in your room with the latest book from Kojira's." With a muttered, "Nothing wrong with reading a good book or two," Ryu rubbed his side in an exaggerated manner. "Besides, I have to make up for all the books you and Riku-kun don't read." Ichiro smiled, flicking Ryu's forehead. "I read and helped mother with the accounts, and that's enough book. Reading for any man," he said. "Be grateful you're the second son, brat." Ryu squirmed as he slid on the wagon's precarious edge, his feet hanging perilously near the dirt path below. "Ni-san," he exclaimed. "Stop teasing the baby, Ichi," Riku said languidly as he drifted toward the rear. "I don't want to explain to Auntie how I came to lose my little baby cousin on his first big boy trip outside the village." "I'm 15. Exclaimed Ryu angrily. "An ickle wee bairn," Ichiro concurred, avoiding Ryu's blow to the shoulder with ease. "Gotta be quicker than that, bratling." "Halt." Old Jin stomped her feet and shook the reins Riku was holding as the wagon creaked slowly to a halt. Grabbing the leather satchel at his side, Ichiro clambered off the wagon's edge and sprinted to the front, where Riku was swinging down from the saddle. While Riku rummaged through the satchel and extracted a meticulously wrapped packet in oilcloth, Ryu whispered at Ichiro's elbow, "Where's the voice coming from?" Ichiro returned the whisper, "Shinobi," and saw Ryu's dark eyes enlarge. "State your name and purpose," the voice said, reverberating off the rock canyon's walls and becoming a chorus of inquiries. As he responded, Riku's always assured voice faltered a bit. "Watanabe Riku, of Watanabe Textiles, Shinobi-san. We come to beg entrance to Iwagakure." There was a long pause before Kenichi, whose tall, broad frame dwarfed both Ikrio's and his younger brothers, appeared behind Ryu in a comforting manner. Just as he opened his mouth to comfort Ryu, the Shinobi-san showed up. A man just appeared in front of Riku, growing out of the earth in the space between heartbeats. It had no alternative term. The only time Ichiro had ever seen Shinobi was when he accompanied father to Kumogakure, but no ninja he had ever seen had just appeared out of nowhere, resembling a fey creature. Wearing a dusty brown chest plate and a long, crimson-red cotton sleeve over his right arm, he even looked like a rock. On his dark head gleamed a silver forehead protector engraved with the twin boulder of Iwa. But the man growled, "Your papers, Watanabe Riku." Silently, Riku passed the packet to him. Ichiro knew it was only a matter of seconds, but it felt like forever as the man skillfully opened the package and flipped through the papers. With a final grunt, the man wrapped the bundle haphazardly and gave it to Riku. "You may wait inside the post while we draw up your paperwork and find a guide for you." Ryu was given a warning glance to be mindful of his manners before he bowed, and Ichiro did the same. Ichiro looked up from the ground and saw that the shinobi had vanished. Thank you, Shinobi.san. We are in your debt. The faint ripple of dirt where he had stood was the only indication of his presence, and even that vanished after a short while. Wow, Ryu exhaled tremblingly. Yeah, Ichiro said, appearing as anxious as Ryu. Riku shook his head and whispered, Shinobi, before returning the oilcloth to Ichiro. Pack this safe, cuz. When he was finished, Ichiro swung it over his shoulder and dutifully put it back in the satchel. We can put Jin and the wagon over behind that clump of rocks, they should be safe enough there. Ryu gave him a disbelieving glance. No one's going to steal them? Kenichi said in a low voice, Child, no one's fool enough to steal from an Iwa outpost. Stealing is a serious offense, punishable by death. So don't you worry none, baby cuz, Riku said laid backly as he gave Ryu a firm shoulder clap. It's real cute when you get all worried though. Oh, shut up Riku, Ryu muttered, something burning at the tips of his ears. Don't we have to go inside anyway? It turned out that the interior was a suspicious looking cavern in the side of the rock canyon, so dank and gloomy that even the sunlight was hesitant to venture inside. Ichiro raised a dark eyebrow in skepticism and asked, Are you sure about this? Riku said softly, Just trust me on this, but it sounded a little forced to him. Ichiro held his breath as he entered the pitch black cavern and entered the light. It felt as though you were walking through a sheet of icy water. After a prolonged moment of shuddering, he opened his eyes to find himself in a completely new world. He had stepped into the interior of a castle from the storybooks, not a pitch black cavern. There was a strange green tint to everything, and the walls were lined with gleaming crystal rocks that glowed an unsettling luminescent color. When he looked up, he saw odd patterns etched on the dome's ceiling, with light bouncing off enormous pieces of stone. Ichiro couldn't resist tightening his hold on the strap around his shoulder. Can I help you? The strange light made the dark face of a ninja writing in a fat book look ghoulish as he looked up from his work table in front of them. Behind him, a massive wall rose from the floor to the dome's ceiling, enclosing the shinobi's secrets behind stone that appeared to be as thick as the waist of a wealthy man. Riku started to say, Watanabe Textiles, but the ninja interrupted him with a wave of his hand. He went back to writing in his book, and Riku turned around with a slight shrug. Oh yeah, Masashi mentioned you guys. Alright, have a seat, we'll have your papers done soon enough. They padded over to the benches along one of the cavern's walls. The seats appeared to have grown out of the wall and the ground, smoothed by innumerable bottoms over the years. With Riku at one side and Kenichi at the other, Ryu swung himself down. Ichiro stood, gazing far beyond the massive stone walls he was defending and the ninja behind the desk. Ni-san, what are you? With a slight shrug, Ichiro slid the strap onto his shoulder. He said, I have to go to the bathroom, and his need increased to the point where he realized that if he didn't go right away, he had a very real risk of blowing up from an overflowing bladder. Geez, couldn't you have taken care of it outside? Ryu's disgusted expression resembled one of those festival-sold demon masks in the odd light. They probably have plumbing, Ichiro said. Water rushing, soap, toilets are being flushed. Ichiro was deprived of civilization. Anyway, it can't hurt to ask. Your neck, Riku said, tossing his head to get his dark hair out of his eyes. Well, guess I'll just tell Uncle Jiro that Ryu will be the one inheriting instead. Ichiro punched Riku's shoulder, perhaps a bit more forcefully than he ought to have, but the idiot deserved it. Not funny. With his heart pounding in his chest and the prospect of using a restroom looming just behind those stone walls, he headed back to the desk. Excuse me, Shinobi.san. The man didn't bother to look up from his work and asked, What is it? Would it be possible, if I could use your bathroom? The man raised an eyebrow and set down his pen. You want to use our bathroom? With his heart in his throat, Ichiro nodded, croaking, running water. We've been traveling for weeks and if you would be so kind, Shinobi.san. The man let out a sigh. He muttered, damn civilians, and reached into one of the desk's drawers to retrieve a piece of paper with some lovely calligraphy on it that looked crumpled and discolored. Where is the person? Ichiro could hardly understand what was written on it. The ninja commanded, bag, and Ichiro dutifully gave the leather satchel to them. When Ichiro saw how rudely the man handled their travel documents and the packet of dried persimmon's mother had packed for the trip, he tried not to flinch. The ninja opened it and savagely went through its contents. He grunted, okay, your bag's clean. Now, give me your arm. Ichiro swallowed, then reluctantly exposed his arm to the shinobi, who slapped the paper against his skin. Ichiro gasped, bluish-white dots glimmering at the corners of his vision as it burned like a hot coal. Pansy ass, snorted the man. The characters on the seal were now burned onto his forearm, the edges of the black marks glowing a soft, faint blue as the pain gradually went away. The man snarled, "You go anywhere you're not supposed to, I'll know," which caused Ichiru's neck to gradually stand on end. "Yes sir," he said in a start. The idea of going to the bathroom suddenly didn't seem as exciting as it had. With his knees popping audibly, the man pushed his chair back and got to his feet. After he made an odd movement with his fingers, a tiny door with a doorknob that was gradually taking shape appeared in the wall behind the desk. The man jerked his head at Ryu and Riku, who were watching with wide eyes as he said, "Go straight down the hallway, make a right, and it'll be the second door on your left. Straight there and back, and if you go anywhere else. Understand?" "Yes," Ichiro replied with a furious nod. "Good." After resettling himself in his chair, the man picked up his pen and resumed writing in his enigmatic book. Ichiro hastily brushed his bag from the table and ducked around it, making his way to the wall. Mounted door. When I touched the doorknob, it felt cold. There was no going back. Ichiro opened the door, fighting the impulse to turn to face his brother. The strap of a dark eye patch sliced cleanly through Ichiru's slicked back hair as his pale, dark-haired self gazed back at him in the mirror. He placed the patch on the edge of the sink after raising it up and removing it from his head with trembling fingers. A scar ran a good inch into his cheek and through his left eyelid. To the touch, it felt cold. When Ichiro opened his left eye, he saw a demon's eye come to life in his own reflection. "I am Hitaki Kakashi." Until the pinwheel of dark blots turned into a circle of black ringing his pupil, the tomo of the eye swirled wildly. "Kai," he muttered, shattering the illusion. As he stumbled to the bathroom, Kakashi threw up and fell awkwardly to his knees. He clung helplessly to the toilet bowl, his greasy hair sticking to his clammy cheek, for a single, terrifying moment, not knowing what was up or down. The nausea that racked his stomach all the time was the only thing he could be sure of in life. Reality gradually returned, piece by piece, in what felt like an eternity. Kakashi grimaced at the bitter taste of bile as he wiped his mouth with the back of his hand as the dry heaves gradually stopped. He flushed his sick, moved cautiously, reached for the metal handle, and pulled down. The backlash was more severe than he had anticipated. Kakashi rose slowly, allowing small streams of chakra to flow through his body and give him the strength he needed to approach the sink cautiously. After turning on the faucet, he cupped the deliciously cool water in his hands and drank it greedily, splashing his face with it. He had spent the entire week before their visit here working hard on his liar's palace, gradually assembling Watanabe Ichiro in the back of his mind. He was the eldest son of a middle-class merchant from a small lightning country village, a protective older brother, and the heir to a company that had been in the family for many generations. Building and maintaining a cover during an infiltration mission was standard procedure. However, the Sharingan assisted him in going one step further and momentarily becoming the cover. The room he had reserved for Watanabe turned into his illusory mind, and Kakashi withdrew into a remote corner of himself, allowing the cover to unfold naturally and only imprinting Ichiru's mind with hazy ideas and suggestions. With the Sharingan, the liar's palace evolved into more than just a spy's defense mechanism and a fully realized delusion that made him forget his true identity. If Kakashi ever got around to recording everything and sending it to the Hokage for approval, it was obviously also extremely dangerous and might even be classified as a kinjutsu. The backlash was so intense that after 6 hours of hiding in the liar's palace, Kakashi almost passed out in the restroom. They needed to get to Iwa as soon as possible. Kakashi used the edge of his rough cotton shirt to wipe his face dry. He crouched on the ground and dug into the satchel, removing a thin bamboo tube. He then uncapped it with a wrist twist, exposing a vial of ink and several thin writing brushes. An ideal writing case for any man who is constantly on the go. Taking out a hair-thin brush, Kakashi opened the ink vial and sniffed at the strong blend of charcoal ink infused with blood and chakra. He dipped the brush carefully and began to make minor adjustments to his forearm seal. The original was slipshod work, and Kakashi was nearly embarrassed to wear it. After 10 minutes, the minor changes he was making faded into his skin and sent a false tracking signal to the master map the guardsman had inlaid on the desk. Enough time to gather some information about Iwa and, if he was fortunate, their target. Using the strap as a makeshift belt, Kakashi wrapped the satchel tightly around his hips and used his strength to perform a basic genjutsu that allowed him to blend into the shadows. Silently he slipped out of the restroom and vanished into the night. Ni-san, are you alright? You look a little sick. Slick with hair styling oil, Ichiro rubbed the back of his neck. I'm fine, I think it's just the air in here that's getting to me. Ryu gave him a suspicious look as she looked up. You were in there for an awfully long time, you know. Nature's call, Ichiro uttered while tinkering slightly with the shoulder strap. Why are you talking so much anyway? Little children should be seen, not heard. Worst older brother. A battered looking ninja wearing dark cargo pants, a dirty brown vest, and a crimson shirt with a single sleeve, similar to the ninja they had encountered in the Rock Canyon, followed Riku as he strolled over to the two of them and said, "Knock it off you two. Try and act your ages, we've got important company. This here is Sabu, he'll be our guide to Iwagakure." Ichiro immediately straightened his back and bowed deeply, as his mother had taught him to do, with his palms in front of his chest. A beat later, Ryu followed, his greetings a low murmur. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Sabu-san. Thank you for graciously guiding us to the village." "Yeah, whatever, dark-eyed Sabu said. "Just keep out my way, no talking, no trying to discover the village's hidden secrets, etc., etc. We're only simple merchants," Ichiro said with a smile. "How could we ever hurt such a strong village of shinobi?" With a sigh, Riku sank onto the mattress and kicked off his sandals. "A real featherbed," he said. "Bless this village." In an attempt to avoid appearing like a country bumpkin, Ryu took a seat on the opposite side of the bed. The entire structure had the appearance of a termite mound, which he had only ever seen in books. The rooms had smooth curved walls and small round windows that gave the impression that they were burrows rather than actual homes. The room had an old television in the corner, 2 plain beds, and a granite writing desk. Ryu lightly said, "Even old man Aku has a better TV than that," as he tapped the smooth floor with the tip of his sandal. Riku sighed contentedly as he fluffed up his pillow and settled down on it. Iwa might be one of the most powerful shinobi villages, but they don't have too many civilians in their village. They have to import a lot of the stuff that they can't make because they don't have enough people to, like TVs and ramen, he said. It's expensive, so a lot of stuff they just keep using and reusing until they really need to buy them. And we're here to take advantage of that, Ryu said slowly as he was mentally assembling the facts. And that's why father was so excited to have the contract from the village. According to Riku, Uncle Jiro beat out 15 other cloth merchants, a little smugly. Iwa has money from doing so many missions and they like to have contracts out with people for years and years. It cuts down the price when they buy in bulk and it fosters good relationships. Uncle Jiro won a 5-year one on the condition that we travel here every summer. In a flurry of shouts and stamping feet, Ryu recalled the day father and Jiro returned from their trip to the capital, clattering off the wagon and into the house. They had fresh tuna that night, and Ichiro had returned with a new book about the 7 wonders of Lightning Country. He was already reading it beneath the table as father thanked him for the delicious dinner. Reaching over from his side of the bed to ruffle Ryu's hair, Riku remarked, "We pull this off and we'll be set for life, little Ryu. Chan." Riku was much larger and stronger than Ryu, and his large arms circled around him as he yelled and attempted to repel the attack. Ryu accepted defeat as inevitable. "Hey, Riku, can you come over to the bathroom for a second?" The strain on his arms subsided, and Ryu's expression mirrored Riku's bewildered one. For some reason, Ni-san sounded a little strange. A small glimmer of light peeked out from the crack of the open door as he slid off the bed, cousin Riku trailing behind him, and headed for the bathroom in the far corner of the room. "What is it, Ni-san? Are you alright? Just come in for a second, both of you." Ichiru's voice sounded different, much more tense and rougher. Had he injured himself? Half expecting to see his brother sprawled on the floor in a pool of blood, Ryu swallowed and pushed open the door. Instead, he spun languidly in his brother's face, meeting the eye of a demon. Ichiro whispered, "Kai," and Ryu's whole world collapsed. Genma croaked, using the back of his sleeve to wipe his mouth. What the goddamned fucking shit was that? He accepted a canteen of water from Kakashi, his hand trembling slightly. Kakashi remarked, "Genjutsu backlash," as he watched the other man gulping down the water with greed in his Adam's apple bob. With his brown hair stuck to his sweaty face, Tenzo sat on the tiled floor and rested his head against the wooden cabinet beneath the sink. Raida-san, puking in the bathroom in the other room. I released him while you two were indisposed. With an audible thunk, Genma placed the empty canteen on the edge of the sink and gave Kakashi a shady look. Indisposed? The first time we did it, I just felt a little queasy, nothing too bad. This time. Genma shook his head, hair slipping out of the stylish play that hung down his back. Damn near killed me is what it did. This time, I thought I was gonna puke all my guts out. Kakashi stuffed his hands in his pockets and shrugged, saying, I warned you all that the full effects haven't been studied, I've never had it hold this long. Seems like the longer it takes, the harder it becomes to pull out your liar's palace. During the end of the war, he had developed it while practicing with Obito's eye, and after Team 7 had broken up, he had worked on it while playing around with Mangekyo. He had previously had to use it for an hour or possibly 2 in order to sneak into mansions and castles on sporadic missions. Never for something so dangerous and complicated. Tenzo said softly from his spot on the floor, "It got the job done," in a harsh, raspy voice. "We're in Iwagakure now." Kakashi hunched his shoulders and wished fervently that his face could be concealed by a mask. He said, "I'll go check on Raida," and left the restroom. It seemed to take forever to get to the door to the adjacent room, even though it was only a few feet away. Now that they were in Iwa, Kakashi touched Obito's eye, which was pulsing violently and sending sharp pain spikes through his head. Obito's half-crushed face and his bloody, hollow eye socket were the first things he saw with this eye. With the other man's hand reaching for the doorknob, Kakashi pulled open the door and faced Raida. Raida remarked, "Good timing, Chief," and Kakashi moved aside to allow him to enter the room through the doorway. "How are you feeling?" Raida closed the door behind him and locked it with a twist of his fingers. "Like I got punched by Tsunade after getting caught peepin' on the ladies," he said. "You?" "Fine," said Kakashi. Raida arched an eyebrow but said nothing about Kakashi's health, for which he was reluctantly thankful. "I'll go check on Genma and the rookie. Sounds like they didn't have too good of a time of it." The faint curses of Genma drifted into the main room from behind the closed bathroom door as Kakashi cocked an ear. He pulled up the corner of his mouth. "Get the two of them here, we're having a meeting in 5. Raida put 2 fingers to his temple in a salute. He uttered, "Aye, Captain Bossman," with a nod in return. Kakashi went to the satchel he had left on the writing desk, dug through it skillfully, and took out the writing case and the oilcloth. Wrapped packet of persimmons bearing the Hanajiro grocer's stamp. He untied it to reveal a bundle of tightly wrapped scrolls imbued with chakra. He opened Obito's eye, uncapped the writing case, and unfolded one on the table. The Iwa Nin was the first man he had ever killed with it. Kakashi drew the expansive map that was etched into his brain with quick, even strokes, allowing the image to flow effortlessly from his head down his arm and onto the scroll. Father's most recent mission was in Iwa. The bloody red gleam of the ink faded to a normal black as he closed Obito's eye and gazed down at the intricate map spread across the scroll. Raida remarked, "It never gets old," seeing that, over Kakashi's shoulder. After declaring, "I'm A1. Trick pony," Kakashi took a small vial of sand out of the writing case and lightly sprinkled it on top of the drying ink. Kakashi carefully picked up the scroll and poured the sand back into the vial as the chakra enhanced sand briefly glowed a bright blue before fading. "Enjoy the show." Raida's breath was hot against the nape of the neck. "Sir, are you?" he said. Kakashi resisted the temptation to reach for the kunai concealed in his sandal's sole. "Are you sure you're alright?" Kakashi remained silent for a while, saying, "Not really, but neither are you." "Yeah," exhaled Raida. "Yeah, Danzo knew what he was doing, sending us here." 3 Third Shinobi War veterans. 3 veterans who were taught to fear and despise Iwa because they had grown up in the shadow of war. Iwagakure had claimed the lives of 3 veterans who had lost friends and family. Danzo was incredibly astute. As soon as Raida obligingly moved out of the way, Kakashi turned around and rolled up the scroll. Huddled in some blankets and sheets they had scrounged from the linen closet, Genma and Tenzo glared up at him from the floor. The fact that they were sitting Caesar with their hands clasped on their thighs and knees on the floor made it appear even more ridiculous. Kakashi unrolled the map on the ground and sat down cross-legged on the floor. Using his index finger, Kakashi indicated the area marked GU Ward, where the main street neatly divided it in half. "I managed to look through the files in the outpost and caught a look at some of the maps and files they have there. That's where we are right now." Genma said, "Ah, the good old bathroom trick," with a phony smile. "So that's what you were doing at the outpost." The lack of his face mask sliding against his skin caused Kakashi to lose his balance and stop smiling. Without it, he would need to exercise greater emotional restraint. Kakashi pointed to the center of the map, where everything was grouped together in the area that was obviously marked Ko-Ward. "This here is the Tsuchikage Tower, the Armory, the Mission Control Center." Kakashi pointed to Q-Ward, which is located a few streets away from the tower, and said, "And here's the main market we're setting up our stall in for the next 2 weeks. We have 4 weeks to accomplish our mission," Kakashi stated, looking directly at each team member. "The target must be eliminated by that time, since our merchant permits expire at that point." As he rocked on the balls of his feet beside Genma's huddled body, Raida questioned, "Is he even in the village?" We made it all the way here, but he could be out of the village on a long term for all we know. Kakashi said, "Oh, he's here," with a thin smile. "When I was the outpost, I checked their logs and saw that Gari had been passing by with a team of genin. They were on a quick escort mission from the village to the border, just a few days ago." A Junin. "Sensei, we'll have to make sure the kids don't get in the way," Genma said, gripping a bedsheet edge with her fingers. "They'll be loose ends." Kakashi gave a sharp nod and made an effort to ignore the thought of his own children waiting at home. "For the first week, we're just going to be collecting intelligence. Set up the stall in the market, make contacts, interact with the locals. Figure out his pattern with his team. Where he eats, where he sleeps. This is his home turf, he'll be comfortable here. He's going to make mistakes. We need to capitalize on that." Tenzo whispered, "No more genjutsu," the purple shadows beneath his eyes bruised. "We needed it to get here, but no more. We can accomplish the mission without it." Kakashi thought about Tenzu's small figure across from him, wrapped in white sheets, with only a large brown eye and a tiny wisp of a face. He said, "I'll take it under consideration," ignoring the tightening of his throat that Tenzu's silent nod brought on. Pulling at a loose thread in his heavy blanket, Genma remarked, "I never imagined I'd ever be this close to you after the end of the war. 7 years, huh? Seems just like yesterday." Gazing directly into Genma's eyes, Kakashi questioned, "I don't have to remind everyone that personal motives are not allowed to interfere with the parameters of the mission, do I?" "Of course not, Captain," Raida said with ease before giving Genma a hard-back thud. "Genma's just being a nostalgic dick." "Yeah, just old Genma being crotchety as usual. Don't mind me, sir." Genma's smile, which was an odd parody of his typically laid-back demeanor, didn't quite reach his eyes. Kakashi ignored the stench of dishonesty coming from his subordinates and took what he could. "I'll take first watch, everyone else get some rest while you can. It's going to be a long month." As the other clan head walked past his seat, Fugaku shuffled his notes on the police force budget, nodding absently to Aburame. Fugaku's temples were already aching with anticipation as Danzo was likely to argue over the force's operating budget once more, dragging out the smallest details into a dull and agonizing discussion. During his weekly meetings with the council, he honored his ancestors by pouring rice wine and pleading with them to use lightning to strike the ancient wart. With the Hokage at the head of the long rectangular table and his advisors Kaharu and Homura at his sides, there was a soft clatter of chairs scraping as everyone took their seats. "Hokage." Sama uttered the solemn words, "We shall now begin the 2562nd session of the meeting of the Great Council of Konohagakure," and Fugaku refrained from letting out a laugh. Makoto pondered the reason behind his elevated blood pressure. Fugaku watched Danzo open his mouth with a resigned expression as the Hokage concluded the opening ceremonial words. "I would like to reintroduce Bill 56AB concerning admission to the academy." As though someone had just slipped a kunai between his ribs, Fugaku took a sharp breath. "Seconded," Inuzuka declared, confidently snarling at Fugaku. "Hokage." "Sama," Fugaku gritted his teeth and uttered, "I was under the impression that the bill was blocked." Danzo interrupted with a voice that was painful to listen to. "As a councilman, I can sponsor a bill to be introduced to the council," he said. Fugaku forced himself not to let his eyes bleed red as he took another ragged breath. As though he hadn't heard the man speak, Fugaku went on, "I was under the impression that this bill calls for an unfair admissions policy that discriminates against those with Kekkei Genkai, specifically those with Jujutsu. This was directed specifically at the Uchiha." Heishi said, "I too, as well, harbor doubts about the validity of this bill," in a slightly more forceful tone than usual. They were together at least in this. "Danzo has legitimate concerns," elderly Bat Katona stated. He was less legitimate than a piece of paper covered in dog poop. How can we forget Setsuna Uchiha's uprising against the village? Not only were they all highly skilled shinobi, but they also focused their attack on the academy, with the help of the Uchiha studying there. Madara was also known for his ability to manipulate the nine-tailed fox. The Uchiha have proved themselves to be innocent, what more do you? Enough. The room suddenly became silent, in part due to the Hokage's powerful voice and in part because of his vast aura, which filled the space like a thick fog. Fugaku clutched his armrests and concentrated on breathing control. Inside. Out. Inside. Out. "We shall table the matter and return to it on another day, when our tempers are cooler and we can discuss it without devolving into petty arguments." "Yes, Hokage." "Sama," the entire room muttered. Fugaku did not open his mouth. According to Elder Miyamoto, The clan cannot stand such slights to its honor, he stated, serious. Joining with the village was supposed to have brought us prosperity, but all the village does is accuse us with wrongs we have never committed. Uchiha Madara was right, a second elder croaked. We have become second to the Senju. We, who joined the Senju in creating the first hidden village, we who have built this village into what it is. Is this how we are to be treated? Second to the Senju, ostracized and excluded because of our Kekkei Genkai, because of our power. Miyamoto bellowed, we must act, we must, and was met with a chorus of murmurs that agreed. Itachi stood up, causing the wrinkles in his hakama to shake, and Fugaku heard the rustle of silk at his side. What are you? Elders, fellow clansmen, father. Itachi bowed lower than the clan heir was supposed to. As he heard the elders' harsh whispers and the startled muttering of the clan members in the room, Fugaku's heart sank. You speak of rising against the village, a coup d'état. You speak out of place, young one, Miyamoto remarked as he firmly placed his cup of rice wine on his table. The deceptively smooth voice of Itachi was as sharp as a whip. When the elders speak of the traitor Uchiha Madara in a positive light, this one grows concerned, he said. Your words call for a break with a village, to killing the Senju we have formed a century-long covenant with. Have the elders calculated the cost of such talk? Much blood will be shed, with one clan against tens of others, no matter the fact that we have the Sharingan. Konoha is home of the Byakugan, the Inuzuka nose, the Aburame Kikai, the Nara's shadow techniques, the Yamanaka's mind control and the Akamichi's body modification techniques, to name just a few. And that is just the lives of the Uchiha who will be lost. What about our honor, our dignity? Do you truly think that by lashing out against the village, we will gain honor, dignity, the respect of others? Fugaku gripped the edges of his cushion, his knuckles turning white, and closed his eyes as the disdain in Itachi's normally gentle voice intensified. Know what the village will see, and what I see is the pathetic attempt of a clan to prove others wrong by kicking them in the shin. Are we children or are we shinobi who have helped found this village? We can do better than this, we can be better than this. We can rise above these petty means and keep the village together. We can gain respect through being good people and good ninja and good villagers. Whether we like it or not, we are the people of the village hidden in the leaves. Fugaku. Sama, I commend you on raising such a naive child, Elder Kakeru said, narrowing his dark eyes. It seems he still hasn't learnt the meaning of strength as a shinobi. Shisui interrupted, slamming his hands on his table and shaking the rice wine bottle. On the contrary, Elder Kakeru, I think Itachi-kun knows every meaning, Shisui said. Just because you're too blinded by power and your own. Fugaku said, enough, and his chakra flared. Immediately, the room became silent, and Itachi and Shisui returned to their cushions while exchanging mutinous glances. Weakness was not permitted, so Fugaku suppressed the urge to pinch the bridge of his nose. Fugaku said softly to his son, we will have a discussion later, before speaking loudly to the group. He said, I apologize on behalf of my son, and bowed his head. I will, of course, take all of your advice and counsel to heart and think it over very deeply, thank you. Fugaku felt every look pierce his back as he rose from his cushion and swept out of the room after that blatant dismissal. Itachi trailed behind him as he left the room, his own little dark shadow following closely behind. He turned around, being careful not to raise his voice, once they were sufficiently out of sight of the room. What were you thinking? You know how the elders are and they are right in their own way. You dishonor me and your mother by displaying your arrogance and speaking out without a thought for custom or manners. You and Shisui, Fugaku exclaimed with a sigh. I apologize for causing you pain, father, but I cannot just stand aside and watch the clan dig itself its own grave. This is madness. Madness is Danzo taking every chance to twist my words and step on the back of the Uchiha. Madness is the Hokage standing by and watching this happen. Madness is when the entire village points its fingers and thinks we killed the Yondaime Hokage and hundreds of shinobi. Madness is when they have locked us away in this village within a village, threatening to keep our children from the academy. What am I supposed to do, Itachi? Stand aside and watch my people suffer? Fugaku breathed raggedly and tightened his right hand into a firm grip on his chest. I am trying to make life better for you and Sasuke, so that when you two grow older and take my place, this will all just be a memory in the past. Listen to the elders and their wisdom, Itachi, kindly. Itachi showed no signs of hearing his silent plea. Rather, his heir, his best and brightest son, who he loved, bowed. Yes, father. Fugaku questioned why he felt as though his own heart was shattering. Danzo pondered, the situation grows dangerous, his voice resonating in the damp air beneath the surface. As expected, Hitaki has left the country, sir. Danzo tapped the ground with his cane while glancing down at the figure kneeling below. Good. As strong as he is predictable. A pity, he could have been as great as Tsukumo at his peak. Still, he should have known better than to meddle where he isn't wanted. Yes, sir. Reports from the Uchiha compound have also arrived. It seems the situation is accelerating. They've always been the impatient sort. Enact Executive Order Dark Horse, as planned. It's time we dealt with this nuisance to the village. Yes, sir, and about the heir, should we? Danzo approached the minimalist wooden desk and chair in the room's corner, which was empty except for a manila folder and a single metal lamp. I'm told that Hitaki is the one to nominate him for service? Yes, sir. Danzo picked up the manila folder on the desk and gave it to the figure kneeling, saying, I have no use for fools like that. After this mission is fulfilled, I have another infiltration mission for you. Iwagakure, this time. I trust you'll do well, Kabuto? Kabuto bowed and said, to the best of my ability, Danzo. Sama, his glasses shining from the reflected light. Good. Travel safely. The room went dark as Danzo extinguished the lamplight. Only 3 times in his life had Sasuke seen the Hokage. Once at cousin Kiko's academy entrance ceremony, when the Hokage sat in his enormous chair and grinned down at Keiko and her yearmates. Once when Sasuke was very, very small and father took him and Itachi to the tower to deliver the documents that formally established Aniki as the Uchiha heir. And once at the annual memorial in the fall, when father finally decided Sasuke was old enough to sit with the members and hear the Hokage read aloud the names of the deceased. For the 4th time in his life, Sasuke gasped in shock as he watched the crimson and white robes swirl past the compound's gates. How short the Hokage was. Aniki gave Sasuke's hand a light tug. Itachi said softly, "Bo," and Sasuke did so while his heart pounded in his chest. The Hokage. Within the compound. Like a dog chasing its tail, his thoughts kept going around and around in his head. With great excitement, Sasuke glanced over and noticed a flash of silver armguards and a bone white mask. Enbu. In an attempt to keep Itachi from hearing how loudly his heart was beating, Sasuke squeezed his hand tightly. Ah, you must be Fugaku's boys, yes? With his hand pulling Sasuke downward, Itachi bowed even more. Yes, Hokage. Sama. You must have grown an inch since I last saw you, Uchiha-kun. And this must be Sasuke, your younger brother? At the sound of his name, Sasuke stood up straight. He bowed once more after saying, Hokage. Sama, in his politest voice, as taught by Aunt Riko. Sasuke felt rough calluses slide against his skin as the Hokage gently grasped his chin. The Hokage said, You have your mother's eyes, in a deep, raspy voice. Old and solemn, his face was twice as wrinkled and brown as a raisin that had been exposed to the sun for too long. Sasuke muttered, Thank you, not knowing how to react to the Hokage's admission that he had girl eyes. The Hokage laughed, deep, round, and rough with smoke, white flashing against dark skin. And your father's spirit. I see the best of the Uchiha clan in you, Uchiha Sasuke. The soft power of Aniki's hand gave Sasuke the courage to press against Itachi's leg. He smiled and repeated, Thank you Hokage. Sama, forgetting that he had lost 2 teeth that morning and that he had vowed to keep a grim expression and be solemn until they grew back. Itachi smoothly interrupted, tilting his head back. We are most grateful for your presence Hokage. Sama, he concluded. If you require any aid while in the compounda. The Hokage stated, I'm actually here to see Uzumaki Naruto. I've been informed that Kakashi entrusted his care to your family, Uchiha-kun. Scrunching his nose, Sasuke tried to figure out why the Hokage would want to see Naruto. Then, he felt guilty because he remembered how they had purposefully covered the temple laundry with exploding ink tags. The temple monks wouldn't have told the Hokage about it because it was just a small amount of laundry, would they? The Hokage went on, he's not in any trouble, and Sasuke froze, making every effort to appear as though he wasn't hiding behind Aniki's leg. But I confess to missing our weekly engagements. Itachi said quietly, Naruto. Kun's helping mother with the housework today, and he shifted his feet carefully so that Sasuke was once more standing next to Itachi rather than behind him. If you would like, Hokage. Sama, I could escort you. Sasuke, you remember the way to Aunt Riko's home? Ignoring that one hand was still gripping Itachi, Sasuke gritted his teeth and folded his arms across his chest, only his right arm doing so. He mockingly remarked, I go there all the time all by myself when you're not here. I'm almost 7 you know. Itachi replied, I know, and the Hokage gave him one of those glances that adults exchange when they believe he isn't looking. Sasuke writhed and freed his hand, rubbing the gooey perspiration on his trouser leg, saying, "You tell me so every day." Sasuke stated gravely, "I have to go to lessons." He looked up at the craggy face, being careful not to look directly at it, and marveled at the enormous hat the Hokage wore, which was so large that it cast a shadow that could have swallowed Sasuke's feet. "So go help the Hokage, Aniki." "I would be very grateful for your help, Uchiha-kun," the Hokage said, tilting his head toward them both. "And I thank you, Sasuke, for lending me the use of your brother today." Knowing that, Aniki's the best, Sasuke nodded. "You'll be very safe, Hokage-sama." "That's enough, Sasuke," Itachi said, jabbing Sasuke in the forehead with lightning fast fingers. A few seconds too late, Sasuke hissed and slashed at Aniki's hand, asking, "Didn't you say you had somewhere else to be? I'll come back at 3 to pick you up, so I better hear good things from Riko-san." Before fleeing in time to avoid another foolish forehead poke, Sasuke made a face at Itachi and drew a brief, respectful bow to the Hokage. He yelled, waving back, "See you later, Ani," and dashed in the direction of the rising sun. The Hokage appeared to him, and the Hokage called him by name and spoke to him directly. Sasuke smiled, thinking of all the stories he could tell about the Hokage's hat, his wrinkled raisin face, and the enigmatic Anbu that hung at his shoulder, mask painted with bright red fangs, at lunch today. The Sandaime calmly remarked, "The tea is quite splendid, you know," while holding a steaming celadon cup in his aged and tangled hands. "Gold leaf green tea from the Wading province in tea country, if I'm not mistaken." Fugaku bowed deeply from the doorway, hair falling forward with a smooth motion. "Hokage-sama, you honor my family with your presence." The Hokage said, sit, and gracefully put down the cup. "There's no need to stand on formality, Fugaku. Dono. Especially when I'm the one intruding." Careful to conceal the ink splatters on his left hand, Fugaku walked to the low table on the floor and sat down on the cushion facing the Hokage. He had ruined the pile of paperwork he was working on and upset an entire inkwell because he had been so taken aback by the news of the Sandaime's visit. "Tea?" Fugaku began to shake his head before meeting the Hokage's unwavering stare. With some reluctance, he said, "If it pleases you," and extended his hand to grab the teapot. With unexpected strength, the Sandaime blasted Fugaku's hand away. No, let me," he said. In stunned silence, Fugaku watched as the Hokage poured out a cup of tea and selected a variety of daifuku, skillfully moving the tea and treats to Fugaku's side. The Hokage's own hand pouring tea. The only thing Fugaku could do was bring the cup to his lips and drink, inhaling a bittersweet clarity. It tasted good. The Sandaime said, "Makoto-san runs a very fine household," and nodded. "The complementary nature of both the food and the porcelain is impeccably matched. I haven't had tea this fine since my wife passed." Fugaku said without thinking, "A great loss to our village," and continued to sip his tea. It was tea that the Hokage poured. Was he attempting to win over the Uchiha? Was this meeting being planned by Danzo? Fugaku frantically searched his mind for inspiration and meaning, but all he could think of were the Hokage's effortless movements and the delightful, light scent of pressed flowers. When the Yondaime was still in power, he and the Hokage shared bottomless cups of tea while playing shugi games. Their 2 wives were huddled together, laughing, and their dark hair blended with bright. That was the last time he had been this close to the Hokage. Fugaku tried to forget by closing his eyes. "We lost much that day," the Hokage sighed, his voice coming from his chest region, including Naruto's family. Fugaku snapped, "He's doing very well here," as the Hokage's words drew him out of dim recollections. "Hitaki came to us and entrusted the boy to my care. I give him no reason to doubt his trust." "And so he is," serenely Sandaime Sama concurred. "Naruto only has good things to say about his stay here." Fugaku said, as he should, and drank to conceal the frown that was pulling at his mouth. What was it that the other man was implying? The Hokage's eyes flitted shut as he enjoyed a bite of flavored mochi. "I will not deny, it surprised me at first, that Kakashi should choose to come to your doorstep and not perhaps mine." The Hokage's eyes opened, and Fugaku was taken aback by the immense sorrow within those concealed depths, which remained bright and clear even after almost a century of existence. "But I begin to see his reasoning now. I am old and unfit for my post, Fugaku," the Sandaime said, grunting. "More suited to dandling grandchildren on my knee than overseeing this village, and I have used my exhaustion and age as an excuse to close my eyes to the growing disquiet." Sandaime Sama The Hokage violently shook his head, tipping his hat to the side. Things are changing, even more rapidly than I can guess, and I have been blind to it all. Willfully, perhaps. But blind all the same. Kakashi's recent actions have shed light on. Well. The Hokage's lips parted. I trust you share some of my anxieties about Councilman Danzo. Heat blazed a blazing brand onto Fugaku's palm as his grip tightened around his teacup. Some, he repeated, his face deliberately kept expressionless. With a sharp hum of chakra, the Hokage stated slowly, he grows ever more bold and dangerous, clasping his hands together. As he peered at Fugaku's dark eyes, the Hokage said, and I cannot even begin to fathom the depths of his machinations. Fugaku ripped his eyes away and gazed down at the cup he was holding without seeing anything. The tea's rippling surface revealed the slight tremor in his fingers. Why now? He said in a raspy voice. He thought of Elder Miyamoto, Itachi's solemn face, Bill 56AB, his wife, and little Sasuke, caught up in the waves of pride and conflict. The Hokage pressed the tips of his fingers together and said, I have heard of some disturbing rumors, Fugaku. Dono, tea now completely abandoned. The Uchiha would never. Fugaku started sternly, lifting his gaze and being struck once more by the profound compassion he saw. He cleared his throat. It is thinking like that which drives us even farther from the village. The Hokage asked softly, from the village or from your seat in the council? From the hearts of the people or from power and respect? Fugaku looked at him in surprise. The Hokage gave Fugaku a wry smile, instantly capturing the moment of surprise that he felt. It's true, power alienates. People fear what they cannot comprehend, what frightens them. Danzo is both frightened of and lust for the power the Uchiha hold in their hands, in the history that permeates this clan. He is loyal to Konoha and Konoha only. To him, the Uchiha represent the greatest threat to harm the village and the greatest weapon to protect it. Know thy enemy as thou knowest thyself, the Sandaime citing a war philosopher from the land of iron who lived a century ago. I have tried, a little, to understand my old friend and enemy. Hokage gave a headshake. And so I am here, trying to understand one of the clans of my village. Tell me, Fugaku, for it is my understanding that the Sharingan can see a bit of the future. What do you see in the future should it continue down this path? Fugaku swallowed as he recalled the bloodlust that arose in his clansmen's hearts, Itachi's face with its red dot and black bleeding eyes, and Miyamoto's aged face, which was etched with sorrow after losing his only son in the Third Great Shinobi War. He bowed his head and uttered, I fear there is no turning back. A hand with wrinkled skin and thick, dark blue veins reached out and said, there is always hope. Will you not take my hand, Fugaku? Dono? Fugaku held his breath, Sharingan a dull pulsing ache that pleaded to be released, blood thumping in his ears and chakra filling the familiar channels that ran through his eyes. The lines of the future were laid out in front of him, and for a brief moment, just a heartbeat, he allowed his eyes to bleed into red, Tomo swirling. The Sandaime's hand, which was actually very old and trembling, glowed like a blazing fire, illuminated by a chakra so intense that it made him cry. The old man's arm revealed the tiny quivers of weakness, doubt, and fear as he held out his hand in hope that Fugaku would meet it. He saw the possibility of his own hand reaching out, read the slight tension in his muscles, and saw his hand taking the Hokage's. He saw his hand staying quiescent at his side and the Hokage's drawing away. He saw his hand reaching out and slapping the Hokage's away, read the chakra building up in his hand almost before he realized it, and saw the Hokage bracing himself in the way his shoulders tensed and the chakra heart. Fire flickered and waved. The future vanished as Fugaku shivered and pushed the chakra from his eyes, leaving only the present's constant uncertainty and a choice to be made. Fugaku bowed and embraced the Hokage, man to man, as one would greet a fellow warrior. Sandaime. Sama, he said. Fugaku. Dono, the Sandaime replied, his hold solid and firm. Fugaku found himself holding a bundle of papers that had been rolled up and secured with a ribbon that bore the Hokage's personal seal, and there was a flutter of paper as the Hokage withdrew his hand. What? The Sandaime said, a beginning, with a pleased expression as he inexplicably took his smoking pipe out of a large sleeve. You don't mind if I? Fugaku said blankly, no, of course not, as he unfolded the papers and saw the outline of a billa or bills. In addition to holding exhibition matches between Senju and Uchiha and festivals commemorating the village's founding, there are plans to open the Uchiha district to petitioning civilians, open the police force to non-Uchiha, and implement a new academy structure that would determine admission based solely on merit and prohibit family names or unique skills from assisting or impeding a student's application. Opening the police force. Fugaku rubbed his hand through his hair, having long since given up on the notion of dignity. Sandame. Sama, you cannot be serious. And opening the district. The elders. The Hokage firmly said, compromise, and snapped his fingers to light his pipe. He exhaled a long stream of smoke, transforming it into legendary creatures with his chakra breath. We have to start somewhere, young one. Before disappearing into the sky, a dragon curled around the stem of the pipes, its curves swaying with strength. In exchange, I will take the academy bill off the table permanently. Fugaku blinked. Hoa. Grimly, the Hokage grinned. I have a little power to me left. It should be enough to calm your elders and to set the rest of these in motion. Fugaku gripped the papers firmly, the delicate rice paper beginning to crumple and tear in his shaking hands. I beg a little time to think about all of this, Hokage. Sama. The Sandame said, decide quickly, with contemplative dark eyes. We do not have much time left at our disposal before Danzo's next act. Holding his breath, Fugaku suppressed the silent, sneaky voice in the back of his mind that questioned whether they were really too late after all. With the door slamming behind him, Hiroki clattered down the stairs that wound around the tiny, two-story house. He skillfully balanced a bag of pork buns and multiple canteens of diluted wine that he had stolen from Dad's hidden liquor cabinet in the cellar, which Dad believed he was unaware of. His mother roared from inside the house, "Don't slam the goddamn door, Hiro.kun." Hiroki could almost see the mop she was holding, which resembled the naginata she had used in battle almost 15 years prior, before she had him and Minako. Nisan and married Dad 3 months pregnant with little Kenji-chan. With his sturdy ninja sandals slapping against the stone steps, Hiroki roared back, "I didn't slam it." With a powerful voice, Hiroki's mother yelled, "Are you getting fresh with me, boy?" The walls trembled. Hiroki shouted back, "Never," and he landed with a happy smile after vaulting down the final flight of stairs, which had stone molding and ripples. "I'll be back in time for dinner." The weatherman had predicted a sunny day with a crisp heat that killed the unprepared and sliced through bones. It was just another Iwa summer day. Whistling and waving at the occasional neighbor, Hiroki slung the pork buns over his shoulder and tied the canteens to his belt. He lacked the lean awkwardness that characterized so many other boys and was tall for his age, with a growth spurt well underway. Like his mother, he was as sturdy as an earth wall and had his father's quick smile. His father was as skilled with an ink brush as his wife was with a knife. Just a few minutes later, he brightened and gave Ryu a wild whoop as he entered the market square. "Oi, where's my book-bound idiot of a friend?" Ryu's dark eyes brightened when he saw Hiroki's face as he peered out of the Watanabe tent that was set up in the market square's corner. Ryu enthusiastically waved his arm as the silk scarves that were draped over the tent's entrance fluttered. "Takahashi." Hiroki took 3 easy steps and pounded Ryu on the back with enthusiasm, canteens thumping firmly against his hip as he cut across the square, more of a wobbly egg-shaped circle, but everyone called it the square, so the square it was. "Ryu. You sneaky conniving little bastard. Are the rumors true that you made out with the hedge witch's girl?" Ryu raised his hands in surrender and wheezed. "You're gonna break me in half, Takahashi." Hiroki gave his back a sheepish rub. He occasionally forgot that Ryu was not a ninja like him, but rather a civilian. Although a little winded and bruised, Ryu appeared to be in good enough health. "Well?" he had insisted. "Did you?" Ryu ducked back into the tent after turning a deep red. Hiroki followed him, bowing once to the two-faced profile of a god suspended from a peg pierced into a tent pole and once in front of the entrance. Back home in Lightning Country, he was a minor god who guarded all entrances and exits, with 2 heads that looked to the past and the future, Ryu had explained. When Hiroki visited his friend, he always paid his respects because he believed that it was impossible to avoid honoring a god, even a foreign one. The tent was longer, wider, and more spacious than anticipated. Light was able to illuminate the amazing fabrics that hung from the walls and penetrate the sturdy canvas. Cotton, cambric, taffeta, silk, muslin, and even a silk bolt with a chakra fire design. It was created by highly skilled weavers who were trained to use their chakra, according to Ryu's cousin Riku-san. They woven silk into chakra strings to create a hidden pattern that could only be revealed with a spark of chakra, illuminating the secret design for a single, heartbreaking moment. They made their way to the back, where a low table was already set up with rice crackers and a steaming pot of tea. Ryu's older brother Ichiro was sleeping on one of the cushions, a book covering his face. After they were comfortably seated, Hiroki unhooked the sack from his shoulder and gave it to Ryu, who gave him a grateful nod. He casually slipped the wine canteens beneath the table. Alcohol, in Hiroki's opinion, was best consumed in a discreet manner. Well, with his cheeks still a dull red, Ryu busied himself pouring out the tea. Mumbling, "I just walked her home," he said. When he said, it was late and she was all alone so. His shoulder jerked uncomfortably, almost spreading hot tea across his lap. Ryu was quiet and a little awkward, always absorbed in his books or stoically enduring Ichiru's taunts, despite being 2 years older than him. Hiroki chuckled, thrilled by Ryu's good luck. "She kissed you?" Ryu ducked his head and said, "Just on the cheek," but Hiroki could see the faint smile he was trying to conceal. Hiroki smiled and bit into a pork bun with the fervor of a 14-year-old boy. "You sly fox," he said. "You've only been mooning after her all bleeding month." Ryu said, "I haven't," as he began to eat the pork buns following a quick prayer to his gods. She's hot," Hiroki said with a wise nod, and with a rack to make even the legendary sucker look tiny. "You became even more flushed." "I was going to say she was nice," he said somewhat stiffly. Takahashi Hiroki. Hiroki winked and blew on his fourth pork bun. "She is very nice," he said. "Very nice." Ryu's stern, frightening face had scared all the young children in the market square, and one of them had to be taken home to change his pants for clean ones. "Everything you say about her is going to be useless and crass, so I'm going to ignore you," he said. Sure, Hiroki replied without hesitation. "You still up for the trip to the stone forest? I want that pair of gloves you're wagering that it doesn't exist." Ryu's face tensed as he gazed down at his teacup, which was slowly releasing steam. That was lightning folk for you, but Hiroki had no idea how the Watanabes could handle tea like that in this kind of weather. Everybody was a little taken aback. The words, "We're leaving next week," were spoken quietly by Ryu. "Our commission's almost up and it's time for us to go home." In his mouth, the partially chewed pork bun turned to dust. "But I thought you were applying for an extension, just a little more time." Ryu gave a headshake. "It's been denied. We're leaving in a few days, after we finish up business and pack everything up." "But," Hiroki swallowed, the solid food sinking to the bottom of her throat. Even though they had only been acquainted for a few weeks, Hiroki acknowledged to himself that they were close friends. Hiroki took pride in his friend's amazement as he showed him the village's hidden secrets during their conversations and games in between missions. "You'll come back next year, right?" Ryu smiled slightly at him. "Yes, I think so. We always honor our contracts." With firmness, Hiroki stated, "Then it's settled. We'll make the best of it before you go and then you'll come back next year and we'll see each other again." Ryu echoed, "Next year," and turned away while sipping that scorching hot tea. "I don't have a mission until the day after tomorrow," Hiroki resolutely stated. "We'll go see the stone forests and get drunk and do all the things we plan to do, just all in a day." Ryu gave a snort. "Do you want to kill us both with exhaustion?" No, this is the best idea," Hiroki yelled as he leapt to his feet, dropping his plate of food to the floor and almost hitting his head on a tent pole above. "I'm a ninja. I won't get tired, and I can carry you on my back. You're tiny and don't even weigh all that much." "I simply haven't experienced my growth spurt yet," Ryu remarked somewhat somberly. "So you're up for it?" Ryu let out a long, agonized sigh. "All right, we'll do it. But only if Riku.kun and Ni.san allows for it." Ichiru's voice drifted languidly up from the floor. "Of course I will, brat," and Hiroki recoiled, instantly settling back down. He had forgotten that Ryu's older brother was curled up on the cushion in the corner, his open book spread face down across his nose, keeping his face hidden. "Sorry, Ni.san," blurted Ryu. "Did we wake you?" Ichiro said, "Only a little bit," in a voice as dry as the heat outside. "But to answer your previous question, yes, of course." Ichiro emerged from the nest of cushions he had been lying in with a rustle of silk, his dark hair rising in untidy spikes. Hiroki could understand why he had used the gel if that was how it normally looked. He continued to cover his mouth and nose with the book. "Riku and I are more than capable of running a business without a 16-year-old brat's interference." Ryu angrily exclaimed, "Ni.san," and struck Ichiro in the shoulder. With one hand holding the book up and the other reaching for a chopstick, Ichiro tilted his head and said, "Go have your fun, brat. Enjoy it while it lasts." Before Hiroki could blink, he had a pork bun pierced on one end with a flash. Ryu interrupted Hiroki by asking, "Don't you have training tomorrow?" "Nah, I can beg off for this," Hiroki said nonchalantly, aware that Sensei would likely drag him by his balls, skin. Less, to his mother to receive his real punishment after flaying him alive. Getting to spend another day with his friend was worthwhile. Ichiro said, "It's settled then," and set down the empty chopstick. Without ever shifting the book or even seeming to chew, he had managed to make the pork bun vanish. He collapsed back into his cushion and resumed his nap, saying, "You boys have your fun." Hiroki said, "Your brother's so weird," without even trying to soften his tone. "He is," said Ryu, wiping his nose in embarrassment. "He's normally not so." Hiroki said, "Lightning country," and shook his head. As naturally as breathing, he counted the bells he could hear tolling in the distance. Hiroki leapt back up after hearing 3 short and 14 long, deep tolls. "Oh shit, Gari. Sensei's gonna kill me, I'm late for training." Ryu gave him a smile. "You better get going and save yourself. We have lots to do tomorrow." Sensei was going to make him perform that dumb crane dance, and he detested the pointless limb contorting pain that Gari Sensei referred to as exercise. "We'll meet at the cave tomorrow at 7 bells, alright?" he said. "It's more like torture." 7 bells, replied Ryu with a nod. "Go." Hiroki left a trail of dust swirling behind him. Tenzo picked up the food that had been strewn all over the floor, brushed it off, and placed it back on the plate. His nose wrinkled as he located the canteens and sniffed them. Kakashi said, "Kenichi would want some of that," in a sleepy tone. Tenzo hissed, "You," and walked toward Kakashi's corpse. The book and the chopstick in the hair. "You nearly broke cover." Kakashi's right eye widened. "Senpai," Tenzo said after the fact. Kakashi said, sorry, habit," and shut his eye. "Besides, it doesn't even matter anymore, not with all the work you've done." Tenzo, somewhat placated, said, "I suppose not," and he took a seat, this time sitting properly in Seiza rather than cross-legged like a native of Lightning Country. Takahashi sees what he wants to and not what he really does. "Are you ready for it tomorrow?" "Of course I am. We've only been preparing all this time." "Are you really?" Kakashi asked in a low, steely voice, and Tenzo turned away to focus on the exquisite and detailed designs of the carpet that was spread out on the floor. "He's a nice boy, according to Kakashi, he is." Kakashi muttered, "Would that there had been any other way," as the thick book pages suffused his face. "I would have spared you this." Tenzo snapped, "It's my choice," she said. "My choice," he repeated, his knuckles turning white. "So it is," Kakashi concurred, and the two of them fell silent as they considered what might happen the next day. There was never a real danger. A genin who entered expecting a friend's embrace was met with a knife to his throat and the angry stare of a demon instead of 2 junin and 2 tokubetsu junin. Genma nodded as Kakashi said, "Serum," with the glass vial in his hand and the kit already out. He pressed his hands against Takahashi Hiroki's left humerus, slowly injecting a full dose of truth serum while green chakra shimmered in his palms. Holding the genjutsu together, Kakashi beaded his forehead with sweat, removing the pain with a sweet numbness that left Hiroki's mouth hanging open and drool slowly trickling down the front of his shirt. Tenzu's mouth twisted as she turned away. After waiting 5 minutes for the serum to start working, Kakashi gradually removed the genjutsu until the child was able to control his mouth once more, regaining some slight mental clarity. Hiroki's back straightened and he made an awkward attempt at a salute after Kakashi ordered, "Takahashi Hiroki, Genin, ID number 109734, and even reduced it to simple sentences. Hiroki said, "Sir," with dreamy, unfocused eyes. "Show me the seal that Gari placed on you." Hiroki pressed a hand against his breast and slowly, clumsily, unbuttoned and pulled off his shirt. "Here," he said, his voice slow and syrupy. Sensei said only to use in times of Dangara. He could see the chakra ink tattooed on Hiroki's chest, peaceful and dormant without the trigger, with the Sharingan's eye. Kakashi said sharply, "Brush," and Raida gave him the inkwell, which was laced with Hiroki's blood, along with a brush made of Hiroki's hair. Kakashi changed the seal carefully, with feather. Soft movements. It was undoubtedly the work of a seal master, and it was magnificent. The characters' effortless elegance, their inner strength, and their love. From a distance, Kakashi observed that Gari must have a deep affection for his students. It proceeded slowly, with Kakashi carefully observing the seal's activity and pausing every few minutes to allow each brushstroke to dry. It remained silent, barely flinching at each change. Leaning back on his heels, Kakashi gave Raida the brush. "Is everyone ready?" His troops gave a nod. Kakashi pulled back his hold on the boy with extreme caution, genjutsu evaporating inch by fragile inch. "Takahashi Hiroki, activate your seal." As charming as a child, Hiroki grinned. "Yes, sir." He touched it, causing the seal to flare red and sing purposefully. In the distance, Kakashi sensed the corresponding flare of chakra, roaring bright and furious, Gari was on her way. When the tomatoes evenly split open, gorgeous rows of jelly, covered greenish seeds are revealed. Makoto grinned as she checked the stockpot that was simmering and slid the heap of sliced tomatoes into a bowl before heading for the stove. For her 2 young boys, who would undoubtedly be hungry after a long day of being 6-year-old boys, she prepared udon and tomato salad. Makoto put the box of dango she had purchased aside and unwrapped the plastic film around it, and his favorite dessert for her oldest son. Makoto gave a soft smile. Seeing so many people at the table once more was pleasant. The air around her began to bend and twist as she stepped toward the counter, and in a split second, she had the kitchen knife pressed gently against the intruder's pulsing carotid and against his throat. He would cut himself with a single motion and instantly bleed out on her kitchen floor. Tomo, spinning with wide red eyes and curly black hair, made Makoto blink. Shisui-kun. And Makoto. Shisui began to flush, and Makoto immediately pulled back her knife. My apologies for my rudeness, but... Makoto accepted his apology with a polite nod of her head and placed her knife on the counter. What is it, Shisui-kun? Shisui said, it's Sasuke, with a blank expression. He's gone missing. With his shirt still unbuttoned, Hiroki took a seat in the center of the cave. Slowly, he blinked, forcing himself to remain conscious. He had to wait for Ryu, so he couldn't sleep. Head lolling to the side, Hiroki grinned. Before Ryu disappeared forever to Lightning Country, they were going to have adventures today. After that, they would have to wait a full year to play again. It was chilly on the rock. Hiroki gave it a light pat. He was friends with rocks. Up until Ryu returned, they would play together. There was a lot of smoke, rocks flying everywhere, and an explosion. As he watched all of this, Hiroki wondered if Ryu was pursuing him. Hiroki, damn it, answer me. Hiroki grinned. No, the rocks were exploding again because it was Gari. Sensei. Did we need to start training? No, he wasn't training, he was just waiting for Ryu. Hiroki. Gari. Sensei ripped through the smoke clouds, the rocks trembling and eroding around him, becoming smaller and smaller rocks. Hiroki said, Gari, Sensei, and grinned up at him. Heavens above, you're... Gari. Sensei paused, bending down and giving Hiroki a fierce look with his dark eyes. What have they done to you? I'm waiting, said Hiroki calmly. Heaven have mercy, murmured Gari. Sensei. For I will not. Then, as if Hiroki were completely weightless, he lifted him into his arms. Then, as Hiroki waited for Ryu, the world exploded once more, but this time he was unable to keep his eyes open and was overcome by darkness. The bait had been accepted by the target. Raida detonated the detonating bombs while Kakashi flared his chakra. It was merely a diversion. Gari was a skilled enough ninja to avoid the exploding tags with ease, but it was still enough to catch him off guard, particularly given the weight he now carried. The roiling rage pulse beneath the ground was a twisted version of the hell some civilians preached about in the outskirts of Fire Country, and Kakashi waited, following the chakra wake left by Gari as he fled underground. Even though it was only a few seconds, Kakashi felt as though time was being stretched to the breaking point while he watched, waited, and listened. They had a limited amount of time before the village began sending people to look into it because they were curious about how much chakra was being used in one of the training grounds. The clearing was immediately filled with a chakra. Enhanced smoke that would not go away, but there was no sign other than the sudden explosion of dust and broken earth. Erupting from the ground in a geyser of rage, it started. After taking his ninjutsu out of its sheath, Kakashi started hunting. They had prepared for the fact that Gari had already cloaked the boys and his chakra. Tenzo radioed in Quadrant 5C, from his position high in the mountain crag that surrounded the training ground at the same crag where Hiroki had previously waited for Ryu. I can feel my tag on the bait there. With his senses stretched to the breaking point, Kakashi clicked back in acknowledgement and continued on his way. Quadrant 5C was located close to the crag's base. After ghosting his way over with his ninjutsu ready, Kakashi felt a sharp pain in his teeth and a chill run down his spine as chakra brushed against chakra. Tenzo radioed to say, Tiger and Wolf have engaged the target, concisely. Kakashi swore and accelerated, clearing the smoke in front of him with a little wind chakra just in time to see Raida tumble into the dirt, his unmarked armor totally destroyed in the chest. Raida's head snapped back to hit the ground, but Genma took the brunt of the fall. Raida's breath caught in his throat, and Kakashi could see the white bone of his ribs. During the war, they told a story while playing poker, using condoms for betting, and eating hard candy in the trenches. To deal with the Iwa soldiers positioned there, the council had once dispatched a whole battalion of men to the border with grass. The war continued for weeks, with neither side making any progress. A deadlock. Then Gari arrived. Their armor was all that remained, blown to pieces and shattered. With a silent howl in his mouth, Kakashi leapt into the battle, ninjutsu yelling with chakra. With his back to him, Gari stood atop a smooth earth dome like a tree, his chest heaving and his sleeves ripped to his shoulders. "Who's next?" Gari yelled, his fists dripping blood. "Who dares to cross me and my student?" Raising his blade, Kakashi let it do the talking. With the shriek of 1,000 dying birds, it sliced through the air, bringing Gari's focus directly to him. It was rippling with pure white chakra. He could feel Genma dragging Raida away with him as he crawled snake-like on the ground behind him. Gari turned to face him and took a deep breath. The White Fang. Obito's eyes snapped open, reading the lines of the future with his blade but a scalpel in his hands, and Kakashi jumped in just as Gari hesitated. A quick cut sent Kakashi reeling away just in time, as a burst of air exploded directly above his head, hitting the crag with a crushing sound that sent dust and broken stone flying in all directions. With a cool flick of his blade, Kakashi spat blood onto the ground. "Tiger's critical," Genma said in a staticky voice over the radio. Looking at compromised circa spine, liver laceration, abdomens already distended, and a developing pneumothorax from broken ribs. Gari stumbled, the tang of ozone heavy in the air, his left hamstring neatly cut through and cauterized with hot, burning chakra. Kakashi said, "Heal as much as you can, you're not coming back here," in a hurried and clipped manner. "Cat, I'm calling you down." After Tenzo and Genma clicked their acknowledgements, Kakashi raised his blade once more, his chakra humming. Anbu. Issue steel was not designed to channel chakra in this manner and for such a long period of time. If it did, it would break in two. Kakashi changed his position, and he wouldn't have to if everything went as planned. "Konoha," Gari snarled, his limbs pulsing wildly with chakra. "I should have known you rat-faced maggot fuckers were behind all of this." Kakashi looked at the target with a tilt of his head. One more, and after that like a legendary figure, Tenzo descended from the sky, his cloak billowing in the wind and his face glimmering with the chakra light pulsing in his hands. Instead of cracking when he landed, the earth roiled and rippled in waves, and Gari growled, his hand already drawn back for a final blow. His air was already exploding with pent-up energy, and he was frighteningly fast. After silently thanking Tenzo for the diversion, Kakashi moved toward the dome, blade singing for blood, and got close enough to see Gari's perspiring face etched in Obito's eye. Kakashi felt stars burst behind his eyes, blue dots exploding and dying with each ragged breath, all from a simple touch, a gentle tap of Gari's hand. With the bone broken and cracked beyond recognition, Kakashi stumbled backwards, his left leg no longer able to support his weight. Gari grinned and said, "A leg for a leg, White Fang," her teeth white against the blood. Pain and chakra exhaustion threatened to knock Kakashi to his knees as he used steel to prop himself up, causing fuzzy blue dots to scatter across his vision. Behind a shield of splintering trees, Tenzo let out a howl of rage, but it was gradually destroyed by Gari's massive waves of explosive chakra from his outstretched arm, and Tenzu's waning strength gradually took its place. "I'm not the White Fang," Kakashi spat before driving the sword deep into the earthen dome on which the two of them stood, exposing Hiroki's serenely dozing face as he did so, lightning chakra screaming. As the chakra that held the dome together was sliced in half, Kakashi's blade sliced into the ground like a hot knife in butter, causing the earth to crumble into dust. A moment too late, Gari's chakra attack against Tenzo held him back just long enough for him to scream and dive at Hiroki. With his blade angled toward Hiroki's neck, Kakashi was prepared to cut through the carotid. Gari muttered, "I'll kill you," his face white under his deep tan. Gari's sluggish movements were marked by Kakashi as his hands trembled. The words, "Not before I kill the boy," came out of Kakashi's throat. "What do you want?" Obito's eye was closed by Kakashi. He could never allow him to see this. "Your life in exchange for the boy," Kakashi said with a start, sensing Tenzo slip behind Gari's back with his blade ready. The child's chakra was a guttering candle in the winter wind, and he could hardly feel it. There was a long pause while Gari thought about it, looking at Hiroki's sleeping face with unreadable green eyes. He said, "I'll take my chances," and lifted his arm as his chakra increased and the air boiled with anger and fire. With a gasp, Gari let go of his arm and gripped his chest instead. The chakra vanished into the dust and his skin turned gray. "What?" What did you? How? Kakashi gently pushed Hiroki's unbuttoned shirt to the side with the tip of his blade, exposing the red, pulsing mark of Gari's seal on Hiroki's chest. Like a living thing, it grew and faded in perfect rhythm as its color changed in time with Hiroki's heartbeat. His mark calls to yours, drawing you closer and closer to him. Sweat was streaming off Gari as he gasped for air, both hands now pressed against the seal in his chest. I made it so that it called at your chakra, pulling more and more as time went on, from your seal to his. Your own lack of regard for your reserves. Kakashi shook his head. That, you can only blame yourself. Gari, breathing heavily, glanced down at his pupil, Hiroki. Kakashi was too slow, and Sharingan closed, his reflexes dulled by pain. As he drew his arm back, grief etched on every line of his body. Gari had used his Kekkei Genkai for the final time, drawing at the last of his chakra and condemning himself to death. Let us die together, Gari sobbed as he extended his arm. All Kakashi could do was watch as the air burst apart, sending fire and smoke directly at him. And came to a halt. From Gari's throat, a sharp silver blade emerged and sliced sideways, splattering Kakashi with copper. Tasting, bright red blood. Sorry, but I can't let you do that, Tenzo said, panting as he knelt on the ground and held his bloody sword aloft. Tenzo. With a shaky smile, Tenzo fell backward onto the floor, his legs giving out beneath him. Tenzo said in a quiet, thin voice, since I saved the day, can I pass out now? Kakashi gave him a rough, hacking laugh that was hardly a laugh at all, leaning back on his sword. Knock yourself out, kid. It was delivered in the middle of the night by a young genin who had been paid 50 ryu by a man wearing a mask to deliver it directly to Uchiha Fugaku without asking any questions. With trembling hands, Fugaku opened it, spinning his Sharingan to look for any clues or hints, such as seal marks, tags, or chakra signatures. A simple white plastic box with a standard containment seal was covered with brown paper and plain string. The temperature was oddly chilly. Father, are you sure? Fugaku used a forceful motion of his hand to silence Itachi. With a skillfully held kunai in one hand and a collection of chakra in the other, Makoto hovered near the doorway. Now none of them slept well. He swung his thumb to break the containment seal, his hands oddly at ease. Without a functional seal, the box hissed and cool mist rose from the lid's exposed edges. The impermanence was burned into a memorable image by 3 sets of whirling red eyes that followed the movement of the vanishing fog. There was nothing but water vapor with a faint hint of chakra, too faint to be more than a fleeting flash of blue. The box was opened by Fugaku. The lump of flesh resting on a bed of ice, white and speckled with clumps of congealed blood, was visible as the Sharingan sliced right through the abrupt rush of cold mist. A dull thud sounded, and Fugaku looked up, his eyes etched with Makoto's ghostly, pale face. The faint fluttering beat of her heart pulsing in the hollow of her throat, the kunai buried to the hilt in the floor, the look on her face, and the little "oh" of her mouth will all be memories for Fugaku for the rest of his life. Shouting in horror, "That's Sasuke's ear," Itachi said. His hands had lost their composure. Now they were trembling violently, trembling like leaves shivering in the face of a wind full of vengeance. His mind refusing to understand, he picked out the small placard next Toa. Fugaku shuddered. It was inexpensive rice paper that cost 1 penny for 100 sheets and was available in stationery stores. The paper was shaking so much that Fugaku could barely read what was on it when he held it up to the light. Itachi's arm was forced to steady as his hand braced it. Fugaku gradually realized that the ink was a drab, rusty brown of the color of dried blood. There was just one character, written with clean, precise brushstrokes by a steady hand. Yield. The emptiness of the silence, which was as heavy as Kaka.ni's flak vest and cold and quiet, engulfed him. In order to break it, Naruto wanted to paint the room's walls a loud, bright orange, scream, shout, break the silence, laugh, and then go play with Ryu, Chan, Sasuke, and Sakura. Rather, he remained in the room's corner, observing the painted images on the walls as they glowed and faded, turning from black to blue and back to black. In front of the rice doors sat an elderly woman with a white head hunched over knitting, her needles flashing in her hands like fish scales. Like Kakashi.ni.san had once shown him, she had pushed him into the room with her bony hands and used her cadra to light up the painted words on the wall. Normally, the painted words in the apartment only light up when Naruto wants to enter and he has to use his hand on the special picture to unlock the door. Naruto exclaimed, "I want to pee," despite the fact that he didn't actually need to. The old fat granny said, "Hush, demon brat," without even raising her head from her foolish knitting. Naruto wanted to scream and show her that he was Uzumaki Naruto, the world's greatest prankster and Kakashi.ni-san's younger brother, but she was acting exactly like the other adults, glaring at him and calling him derogatory names. Just to create some noise, Naruto drummed his heels on the ground and demanded, "Is Kakashi.ni-san back yet?" The elderly grandmother snorted, her voice croaky and ancient, as if it had been lifted directly from fairy tales about elderly witches who lived in the forest. "Boy, the Hitaki should be the least of your concerns right now," she said. Naruto slammed his foot down extra forcefully and said, "I don't like you," without even making a face despite how painful it was. At least Shisui had conversed and played with Naruto, and the two of them had created drawings of Naruto's awesome Hokage outfit, which he would eventually don as a Super S-ranked ninja. "I want Shisui back again instead of you." Although Shisui-kun was exhausted, Naruto could see that his face was extremely pale and white, even for Uchiha. Naruto considered himself a regular Uchiha expert by now, having lived with them for weeks and weeks and weeks. Uchiha were normally rice, paper, pale, and when they were in the sun, none of them ever got brown like Naruto but a blotchy shiny red that peeled and then went straight back to being white. Naruto also thought that Sasuke's family was somewhat strange. When Naruto once asked Shisui about the search outside, Shisui simply gave him a fake smile and held Naruto so tightly to his chest that Naruto felt like he was about to explode. He merely listened to Shisui's statement that they were making every effort and that Naruto would only need to remain hidden away like this for a short while longer in order to avoid going missing like Sasuke if he could just be a little more patient. Sasuke. With his head down and his knees tucked in close to his chest, Naruto rolled into a ball. He had been waiting a long time for Kakashi.ni-san to return, and now that Sasuke was gone, Naruto was trapped in this dumb little room with the glowing pictures and the elderly, obese woman. He refused to cry because he was now an adult and adults don't cry. The elderly woman said, "TCH," and for the first time since entering the room, she stopped knitting and limped over to Naruto, her back hunched and curved like an old tree. She retrieved a pristine white handkerchief from the inside of her kimono and vigorously cleansed Naruto's face. She held it over Naruto's nose and said, "Blow, little brat," and he blew so loudly that he gave a goose. Like honk. The elderly woman sniffed and put away the filthy hanky as he giggled. The elderly grandmother said, "We'll find him," and she sat down as if Fugaku-san had ordered them to sit during mealtimes. "And Hitaki will come back for you." Naruto looked down at his socks and said, "But how do you know for sure?" With tiny green frogs dancing across the orange backdrop, they were his favorite. He had informed Naruto that they would be living together, and Kakashi.ni-san had bought them for him when they went shopping. "Because I am very old and I know many things," said old Granny, her tightly pursed, wrinkled lips. "And I also know that it is past time for you to do your hiragana homework." "PFFFBBBBBTTTT," Naruto said, his puffed cheeks gradually deflating as he blew air out of his pursed lips. "I hate homework," he whispered. Naruto complained as the elderly grandmother gave him a stern look, but he began to creep toward the work table at the far end of the room, slowly dragging his butt across the floor without ever quite lifting it. The elderly woman said, "Walk," in a very stern and icy tone. Naruto kept scooting his butt slowly, demon brat. Jumping to his feet, Naruto gestured at her. "Don't you forget that my name is Uzumaki Naruto," he yelled, stamping his foot. "Not demon or brat or anything, I'm Naruto." They gazed at one another for a long time, with Naruto becoming more and more irate, redder, and perhaps even a little afraid. However, Ninja never gave up, and he was going to be the best of them all. When the elderly grandmother finally said, "Uzumaki," she turned away. "Go do your homework." After stomping to the desk, Naruto dragged his chair out and sat down forcefully. Then he rubbed his butt and winced because it hurt a lot to sit down hard. Naruto picked up his favorite of the drawings he had made yesterday, which were still all over the desk. It showed him Sasuke, Sakura, and Kakashi.ni-san standing together, not holding hands, as that was reserved for girls, with Kakashi.ni-san in the back, looking particularly tall and beaming. He had received assistance from Shisui in coloring everyone's hair, particularly the gray spikes on Kakashi.ni-san's. He whispered, "Come back soon," at the family photo. Itachi entered, smelling of ozone and sweat, and saw only the steady flame of a single candle flicker for a moment. There was no window. His dark eyes, almost identical to his own, looked up, flashing red for a moment before returning to their usual black. Exhaustion etched into every line of Shisui's body, with fine wrinkles marring his pale brow. He slowly pulled himself up from his knees. Itachi said, "Shisui," and stopped his cousin from climbing all the way up by placing a soft hand on his shoulder. "Thank you for coming." "You called," Shisui said plainly, his mouth twitching with the faintest vestige of his usually radiant smile. "So I did," Itachi remarked as he and Shisui sat down in Seiza, their knees nearly touching. Before the idea of a hidden village was ever conceived, the ancient holy tablets appeared to glare down disapprovingly from the walls, faded strokes of black ink painted on wood that had been deemed old. "Is there?" Shisui said, "I have a noise-canceling genjutsu in place," and he nodded. "Speak freely, no one will be able to overhear." "Good." Itachi inhaled deeply, his chest brimming with flames that pleaded to be released as his chakra was drawn up deep within him. "I have met with the Hokage." "And?" Shisui's head jerked at Itachi, his face covered in a flurry of black curls. "He suspects as we do," Itachi remarked, prodding his knee's hard bone with his fingernails. "That Danzo is behind his disappearance." "Suspect?" Shisui hissed, and the candle flame guttered, illuminating his cousin's strong jawline and creating odd shadows over his pallid face. "We know." Itachi pictured Sasuke's ear resting in a little box, its gentle curve white with frost and speckled with old blood. "Yes," he said under his breath. "The illusion that Danzo has cast is very strong. He drives fear and madness into all of us." Shisui fans the flames that were already growing out of control. "He's using Sasuke's disappearance to drive us over the edge, exhausting and turning the Uchiha against the village. It's an illusion that no Kai or sharp edge can break." Shisui's voice broke as she said, "Because it's real. Aniki is the greatest." "I've been asked to infiltrate Root," Itachi said, closing his eyes. "You don't mean Danzo's?" Breaking Seiza, Shisui took a sharp breath and grasped Itachi's shoulder. "Itachi, do you even know what?" Tomo was spinning languidly when Itachi opened his eyes, hooded lids showing bloody red pupils. With a ragged breath, he said, "My intention is to find Sasuke, and should it come to it, to kill all those who would threaten the peace of the village." The fire inside him grew until it seemed like everything had been reduced to dust and ash. Shisui hissed, waves of heat flickering from behind his lips bitten down to bloodied flesh, and Itachi could see his breath curl in the air as he said, "You can't tell me that the Hokage would ask something like this of you." "I will do whatever I can for my brother," Itachi uttered, gazing directly at the enormous, meticulously detailed engraving of the Uchiha fan beneath the sacred tablets. "And if it means losing myself, so be it. I offer myself to you, shining sun of our people, and I pray that this unworthy one will be sufficient restitution. Destroy this darkness and bring my brother back, Amaterasu, the divine radiance of the heavens. I can't let you do that." When Itachi lost control of his Sharingan, the ordinary world fell back on him, and the world's fate lines vanished into thin air. "What?" Shisui's fingers entwined with Itachi's as he moved his grip from his shoulder to his hand, saying, "You're the future head of this clan. You can't risk yourself like this, not with Sasuke already missing." He was sweating profusely and his skin was scalding hot. Shisui yelled angrily, "I won't let you do that to yourself. I won't let you destroy yourself trying to keep the damned village together." Itachi gulped, his mind drifting slowly in a sea of viscous honey. "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me," Shisui stated, her eyes bright and her grip tightening. "Threaten the peace. You know, even better than I do, how fragile the clan is right now, especially with Sasuke's kidnapping. One wrong move and we'll be at war with the village, and Danzo has no better excuse to put us down, like we're all a pack of rabid dogs. You can't tell me that it wouldn't be your job to stop that from happening, even if it means killing your family." Itachi shook his head slowly as Shisui's voice echoed in his head, obliterating everything but the deep, intoxicating chime of his words. Itachi's Sharingan gradually unfolded in his eyes as he said, "Shisui." He immediately catalogued Shisui's quivering face, the chakra blazing brightly in his fingers, and traced the movement of chakra from his cousin's body to his own. "Release the genjutsu." Shisui pulled away and smiled crookedly at Itachi. After saying, "I had to try," he withdrew his fingers, breaking the illusion. Itachi discovered that he could think clearly again as the cotton that had been wrapped around his head gradually evaporated. "Why would you do this?" Shisui's smile gradually disappeared, and when he extended his hand once more, Itachi noticed that there was no trick, just Shisui's hand softly stroking Itachi's face. Shisui said, "Let me go in your place," as though that were sufficient. Dust and ashes were tasted by Itachi, and if I said no? Shisui's eyes bled red, and Itachi noticed that his pale face was reflected in Shisui's circling Tomo, and that Sharingan was reflected in Sharingan. Then I'll knock you out and go anyway. I'm better suited for this job anyway. I'm stronger than you in Genjutsu, and Danzo has no reason to suspect anything from me. Better suited to kill clansmen? According to Shisui, you're needed to lead the resistance and convince the elders, she said softly. Shisui's fingers clenched, the tips of his fingernails pressing tiny pinpricks of pressure against Itachi's cheekbone. I'm just a branch kid, blessed with the favor of the main family and a gift for party tricks. I'm replaceable. You're not. Shisui couldn't reach Itachi as he jerked his head away. You're not giving me much a choice. I'm sorry. With his eyes closed, Itachi saw that the fire in his chest had extinguished, leaving behind only the charred wasteland where his heart had once been. Go, he uttered haltingly. Thank you. With his fingers digging into his thigh's hard muscle, Itachi turned his head away. Get out. Itachi was left alone in the dimly lit room as Shisui departed, with only the silent holy tablets to observe. They remained silent while he sat in perfect seiza, his face slowly and steadily streaming with tears. They left Hiroki little more than his life. Kakashi watched radio while Genma cared for the boy, his hands radiating a calm bluish green that came in bursts. Tenzo kept himself occupied in the field, where a group of clones worked to fix the ground so that it appeared less like a battlefield and more like a typical training area. How much longer? Genma's voice was strained as he said, just give me a couple more minutes. Kakashi could only imagine how pale his face was beneath the unyielding porcelain mask that was carved into the shape of a howling wolf. Kakashi continuously monitored radio's pulse, which was too rapid and feeble for him to tolerate. Even though his chest rise was a little shallow, he was breathing regularly despite his cold, pale skin from blood loss. Kakashi accepted the good news he received. Genma pulled himself back up onto his feet and stumbled a bit, dismissing Kakashi's attempt to assist him. I've done the best I can. I'm fine. He laughed harshly. This fucking mission. Kakashi sent out a chakra pulse as he placed a hand against Hiroki's bare forearm. Chakra coils were ripped and shredded like wet tissue paper, and beneath his fingertips was nothing but carnage. It was convincing enough to pass for a jutsu backlash, with Hiroki's coils exploding with chakra following a botched attempt to practice a more advanced technique. He would never again be able to form a jutsu. This is very good work. Genma tilted his head in gratitude and rubbed the back of his neck. Yeah, well. You can thank me by taking us all home, Captain. Kakashi got to his feet while idly cracking his finger joints. Cat, leave it as it is, we've got to get moving back to home base. Tenzo, who had been sculpting it to his exact specifications, was standing atop a slowly growing boulder when he looked up. Since the fight, he had been able to avoid Hiroki's body and had been content to perform cleanup and surveillance tasks. We're going back to the square. We have to maintain our cover. With Gari reported missing in Hiroki's freak accident, they're going to be suspicious of anyone who leaves Iwa in a hurry. They're going to swing by to interrogate anyway. We're fresh-faced foreigners from Lightning Country. Genma moved enough to take a swig from his canteen while wearing his mask. A pale, sweat-stained strip of skin was visible, and the person said, I can't wait until we're out of this damned hellhole. Leaping off his rock and trotting over, Tenzo asked, how are we going to explain Tiger's injuries? He never looked at the body on the ground as he came to a stop about 5 feet from Hiroki. We're not special intel operatives trained to maintain a cover under this kind of pressure, Kakashi stated quietly. We may have to rely on the liar's palace. The only indication that Cat was uncomfortable was the tightening of his fists. Oh. Genma tried to joke, try to contain your enthusiasm, but it didn't work. His eyes never met the corners of his smile. Kakashi paused, clearing his throat, and said, for what it's worth. He gazed down at Radio's motionless body, which was covered in aluminum bunting to retain heat and wrapped in extra blankets. When he was sleeping, Raida was usually a sprawl of limbs, a mountain of a man with enormous feet protruding from beneath a blanket that barely covered his ankles. Now, lying upright with blood leaking through hurried bandages, he was anything but normal. I never intended to draw his attention to our team like this. Genma said, we know, without being rude, but the corner of his mouth turned down, and Kakashi turned his head away because he couldn't bear to look his subordinate in the eye. After clearing his throat, Kakashi said, let's get going, and he leaned over to hold Raida. He weighed more than Kakashi had recalled, a jumbled mass of mangled plate armor and long limbs. He took care not to glance at the partially healed pieces of Raida's chest. With only a small wince, Genma slung his medic's kit over one shoulder and said, you alright, kiddo? Tenzo jerked his eyes from Hiroki's dozing face and shifted his unyieldingly smooth cat mask's face to Genma. Yes, he replied coolly. Kakashi closed his one good eye and said, "Seals on 3, his mouth tasting of dust and ash." Kanryu knocked on the granite wooden door, Iwa military police, the stone rippling outward from the center of his fist. While riffling through the papers the office monkeys had handed them on their way out, Shizuka chewed absently on her toothpick. They must be piss-fucking poor if they're squatting in old Genjihara's dump. Kanryu snorted and knocked again, this time with enough force to move the stone's grain. "They're from Lightning. They probably don't the difference between a hovel and a garbage dump," he said. "Besides, the Ministry of Imports probably billeted them here so they can pocket the difference and buy whores with the extra money." Shizuka said sardonically, "You have such a way with words, Kanryu," as the door opened and a young boy with large round eyes and pale skin with messy hair tied in a topknot was revealed. His eyes widened slightly as he took in the police emblems embroidered on the front of their vests and the chakra sticks dangling from their belts. "How can I help you, sir, ma'am?" he asked courteously. Shizuka reeled off, with a tone so hard and polished that the boy instantly straightened his back. "We are here to ask a few questions regarding an incident that occurred a few hours ago in the village and we have reason to believe the culprit is around the area," Shizuka said. Of course," the boy replied. "I don't know what's going on, but if you would like to come inside, I can get Ichiro.ni to answer some of your questions." "Much obliged," Kanryu said with a smile that had multiple gaps and tobacco. Stained teeth. Shizuka, irritated that he was frightening the young child, kicked him lightly as the boy winced at the sight. Kanryu grinned more broadly, enjoying the response. It never grew stale. In a neat, albeit small, sitting room, they were seated courteously and surrounded by boxes and boxes of what Kanryu guessed were fabric and whatever the devil the merchants were selling. "Sorry about the mess," the boy said, pushing aside a box of papers and receipts and clearing away a chair. "We're packing up to leave soon and it's gotten a little bit crazy." "Not a problem," Shizuka said with ease, smiling at the child and leaning back in the chair. "Nice place you got here." After mumbling something and flushing to the tips of his roots, the poor bastard fled the room, most likely in search of Ichiro.ni. Kanryu mumbled, "And you kicked me for smiling at the kid, you have no sense of mercy or fairness." Shizuka retorted, "Your smile isn't exactly the pinnacle of beauty." Kanryu said, "Yeah well, I could say the same of yours," and he managed to avoid a pathetic arm punch. Ichiro.ni, whose hair was slicked back in the Lightning Countrymen's preferred style and who smelled of camphor grease and an overpowering cologne that made Kanryu's nose itch, interrupted their argument. With dark circles coloring the skin beneath his eyes, he appeared exhausted and pale. Ichiro said, "It's an honor to meet you both," his voice rough from exhaustion. "My apologies for the wait." Shizuka leaned forward in her chair and looked up, down, and sideways at the new boy. "Quite all right," she said. "You must be Ichiro.ni." Ichiro said, "Yes, that's me," as he sat down on a shabby looking footstool and combed through his oily hair. "Ryu said you had some questions about some incident or another." Ryu, the boy who greeted them at the door, peeked around the corner and blushed when he saw Shizuka's face. "An important member of our community and his student went missing several hours ago. The student was eventually found, but he's severely injured, and his master is still presumed to be missing. We believe that the culprit fled to this general area, judging by the evidence we have so far." Enjoying the way the boy's face whitened, Kanryu winked and made sure to show off his tattooed arms. Ichiro shook his head and appeared genuinely sorry. "This is the first I've heard of anything like this," he said. Kanryu told Shizuka by scratching the left side of his nose and reading nothing but the stench of pure truth on his face. "I'm afraid I've been home all day and a good part of last night, so all of this is news to me." Shizuka gently inquired, "If I may ask what you were doing?" as Kanryu flexed his muscles to appear as menacing as possible in the background. He was nothing more than a stupid piece of hired muscle, and there was no need to tell anyone. Ichiro sighed and drooped his shoulders. "My cousin and our hired bodyguard seem to have come down with food poisoning," he said. "I've been up all night trying to lower their fevers and cleaning up after them." With a tongue cluck, Shizuka said, "My sympathies. After I'm done with him," Ichiro scowled, "you can send them to Genjihara. They were ill because of the damned food they serve in this inn. This entire month, at least 3 other families that I know on this floor have voiced their dissatisfaction with the meals provided." Shizuka nodded and said, "It must have been a horrible experience. If I may be so impolite as to inquire, is there a way we can verify that you were present here?" "He was with me all night, holding back Riku's hair as he puked all over the bathroom," Ichiro said, gesturing behind him. The boy gave them a hesitant smile from behind the corner. "And look, there's old man Shinta at the front desk downstairs. He can tell you that the last time he saw us was late yesterday afternoon, and he's always down there. He really needed to use the restroom, so that was good. Perhaps they would have enough time before their next assignment to visit the lamb spice shop that opened up near headquarters. That's very helpful, Shizuka said, nodding and tapping her finger against her leg. Thank you so much for your assistance, Ichiro-san. We have already occupied enough of your hospitality, so we have to leave. Ichiro objected, but I haven't even offered you tea, as Kanryu got to his feet, knees leaking and joints popping. Kanryu gave his customary farewell nod and left the room just in time to see Shizuka smile and wink at the poor boy who was lurking in the background. Maybe next time, Shizuka said, grinning and standing up as well, her chakra stick thumping against her hip. It was a pleasure meeting you, Ichiro-san. Shizuka chuckled and used a sharp chakra twist to seal the door behind her. They're cute when they're like that, she said. Can't find any men your age, so you've resorted to robbing cradles now, is that how it's going? Kanryu rolled his eyes. Oh hush, Shizuka said, writing on her notepad, or we're going to spend our lunch break at Rico's cafe. Subjects 1472 A clear, no follow, up recommended. No need to get nasty, Kanryu grumbled. The old hag likes touching me in inappropriate places too much for me to ever feel safe eating there. She once gave you a butt pinch, Shizuka chuckled. The last man I saw touch you without your permission ended up in the hospital for a month and a half, Kanryu sighed. Shizuka said, I was being nice, and she was obviously correct. The poor bastard who had been there just before had become permanently disabled. Lamb shop on Sakurai Street. It felt nice and dry against his bare feet, and Kanryu said, now we're talking, twisting his heel against the cool stone floor to transform the solid rock into a silky smooth puddle. Next stop, lunch. Even though Shizuka gripped his arm as they sank into the ground, sucked in by a gently swirling vortex of molten stone, she complained, why is it that you're the one that always initiates the burrowing jutsu? And you always do it funny, it makes me dizzy whenever I get out. As they vanished into the ground, Kanryu snorted, no side. Along comments while I'm working a jutsu, the liquid floor instantly turning into solid rock where they had been. As the Chunin examined their documents and stamped them with the Ministry of Border's official seal, she remarked absently, you're scheduled to leave in a few days, asking why they were leaving so early. After a month here, Riku smiled and winked at her, saying, we're all out of stock actually. He also said, we're a little homesick for real mountain air. Are you planning to return? The Chunin leaned against the desk to get a better look down her shirt and grinned slyly. Maybe, said Riku, and with a graceful wrist twist, retrieved the papers from her hand and placed them back in a battered leather pouch. How do you feel about summer in a year? It's a miracle how you get any girls at all if that's all the smooth talking you have, the Chunin said, chuckling loudly and brightly as she threw back her head to show off the smooth curve of her neck. Riku gave her a finger wiggle and said, ah, but I've got the magic touch. I'm beginning to see why, the Chunin said huskily, her once bright smile turning salacious. From the front of the wagon, Ichiro yelled, oi, Riku, flicking the reins impatiently. Put it back in your pants and let's get going. After glancing at her regretfully, Riku put his leather pouch away and said, next time, my fair ninja lady? We'll see, she waved him off, laughing. It took a sharp tug and a click of Ichiro's tongue to get them rolling and out of Iwagakure for the first time in nearly a month, and Riku jumped up onto the wagon with a bounce in his step, jostling Ichiro's elbows as he fought for space on the front seat. As they got closer to home and farther away from Iwa's gates, Genma sagged forward visibly, tension practically leaking out of him. Weary of flirting? There was a reason guides were only required to bring people in, not out. Kakashi asked, feeling the tiniest genjutsu tendrils entwine around him and obscure the gates from view. Just tired, Genma said, rubbing his temples and pinching his nose. I have a huge headache that won't go away. You're pushing yourself too hard, Kakashi said quietly. You shouldn't have healed my leg last night. Kakashi glanced at Genma, who was deathly white beneath his tan and had great dark bruises under and around his eyes, which Kakashi wondered were lingering after effects of being so close to Gari's Kekkei Genkei. It's a necessary allocation of resources, immediately replied Genma. You're the captain and you're the only one who knows how to get us out of this shitshow intact and back home. Despite the fact that Jin scarcely needed guidance or encouragement, Kakashi remarked, you're our only medic, and flicked the reins. And Raida is the most critically injured. You now, back during the war, I thought they were, not joking, but you know how it is with soldiers, Genma said, jerking his head towards the back, even though Raida and Tenzo were hidden from view by an oilcloth tent. He shuddered, I don't even know how Tsunade Sama managed to save so many of his victims. Seeing it for real, in person. Kakashi said, "You did good," and Genma began to tense her shoulders next to him. You did enough and more, soldier," Kakashi said, pressing in closer to Genma. "We're all still alive." Kakashi sensed Genma's gradual relaxation and began to lean against him, and they sat in silent silence for a long time, traveling through deserted canyons with only the sound of Jin's hoofbeats to accompany their own heartbeats. As the ground became softer and more covered with moss, and the air became wetter, Kakashi pushed them harder and faster. About 50 miles back, near a civilian homestead, they had cut the horse loose and removed all signs of the wagon, and they ran like true ninjas, with only the wind in their faces and their chakra urging them on. Hours passed in this mind-numbing state, legs growing leaden and exhausted as they pressed forward relentlessly, while Tenzo ran point, arms streaming behind him like twin blades cutting through the wind, and Kakashi followed, with Raida on his back and Genma protecting their rear, the two steady points of chakra that anchored Kakashi in the mind-numbing run towards the end. Everything collapsed just an hour into their arduous run to the border. Between each heartbeat, Kakashi's hold on the world broke, and he slammed to a halt, gripping Raida tightly to prevent him from slipping. He inhaled automatically, frantically looking for the two anchors that held him in place. Tenzu's porcelain white cat mask and chakra signature were visible ahead, fluttering and beating in bewilderment, while Raida's much slower and fainter signature washed slowly at the edge of Kakashi's senses on his back. That only left. Genma, are you with me?" Tenzo jumped over him and landed on the ground where Genma was lying, hunched over. With the exception of the large, unsightly bruises around his eyes, his face was white in the reflected moonlight, and his limbs were spread out like a broken doll. Tenzo instinctively drew back as Kakashi gently placed Raida on the ground beside Genma and summoned a lightning bolt to his fingers, carefully bringing them to Genma's motionless face. Gently opening Genma's eyes, he examined the pupils, which were blown and uneven. Kakashi turned off the light and reached down to pinch and twist Genma's earlobe, but there was no response. The pulse was weak and erratic. "What's happening?" Instead of responding, Kakashi cocked his head to the side, brushed Genma's hair aside to expose deep purple bruises behind Genma's ears, and prodded the base of Genma's skull with delicate fingers, feeling a slight depression near the bottom, just near the border of his temporal and occipital bones. "Brain bleed," Kakashi grumbled. "And it's a few days old, judging by the bruising and the state of his pupils right now." "You can't say he hasn't Tenzo said in horror. "It's been 4 days since the fight with Gari." Kakashi remarked quietly, "It's a miracle he's lasted this long," recalling the instant when Genma's head had jerked back and struck the floor, absorbing Raida's blow. "We're so close to grass, if we could just carry." "It's hard enough with Raida on my back as it is," Kakashi stated. "Carrying Genma would just slow us down even more." "You can't mean we leave him to his fate," Tenzo growled, clenching his shoulders. Pulling his dog tags over his head, Kakashi said, "Not quite," and held them out expectantly. "Take this and run to the outpost we have by the grass. Fire border." "But, this is an order," Kakashi stated bluntly. "Get reinforcements, run, and take my tags. We're close enough to the grass. Earth border as it is from here, and the grass is small enough that if you run hard enough, you can cross it in a few hours. There, they will have sufficient power to summon transports to come here." As Tenzo swallowed, Kakashi noticed the Adam's apple in his throat bob. "You get it, soldier?" Tenzo said, "Sir, yes sir," and accepted the tags. "All right. We'll be here waiting." There was no better farewell than seeing Tenzo disappear into thin air, his inky black cloak fading away until all that was left for Kakashi to see was Tenzo's ghoulishly smiling cat mask, which vanished into the night as well. Tenzo saluted, fist over his heart. "Are you prepared, Shisui Uchiha?" When Shisui held the mask up to the light, it appeared surprisingly simple and everyday in the fluorescent light, dripping with the blood of strange enemies and unlike the mask of terrors that haunted every young child's nightmares. Shisui said, "As ready as I ever will be, Hokage Sama," and he blinked as he adjusted to the heavy weight of porcelain against his face before sliding the mask over his face and fastening it with a chakra string. Slowly, Sandame Sama said, "You go with my blessings and the hopes of our village," in a particularly hoarse voice tempered by smoke. Shisui tried to smile, but the mask was too heavy and strange on his face to allow for any facial expressions, so he sank to one knee and saluted, bowing deeply. "No pressure," he said. Shisui said, "You haven't asked for a better pair of eyes, Hokage Sama," and got to his feet. "I'll end this, one way or another. living up to his nickname, Sandame. Sama remained silent for a few moments before clearing his throat rather loudly in the empty room, and he watched as Shisui instantly disappeared without even a disguising puff of smoke or leaves to hide the disturbance. With gentle words, "You may come out now, Uchiha-kun," he said. Shadows trickled down Itachi's front and gathered at his feet as he moved away from the corner, revealing his entire front, with the curve of his jaw and the remnants of inky shades still clinging stubbornly to his hair, giving him a slightly sinister appearance. "Hokage. Sama," Itachi said with a bow, "according to Sandame, I have done as you asked." Itachi flicked a finger, and the darkness at his feet soaked into the floor and vanished. "He is." Itachi paused, and the abnormally smooth exterior of his face rippled. "Mere words cannot express the depth of my gratitude. He is very important to me," Itachi added, a little stumbling. Words alone could not convey the Sandame's sorrow and regret. If there were any other way, he started, then stopped. Sandame thought it might be to conceal the Sharingan, or maybe tears, but he wasn't sure. "If only," Itachi said, closing his eyes. When Kakashi awoke, he was drowning in his own blood. Bile rose in his throat and he spat it out immediately, aiming at the intruder hovering over his face as he tried to cope with the sudden flood of memories that were flooding in from the death of his watch clone. Kakashi thrust forward blindly, rewarded with a sharp hiss and the smell of burning fat as muscle memory sent chakra through his fingers, summoning the burning white lightning that left blue streaks in his vision. As Kakashi pushed his forehead protector up and scrambled backwards, feeling the reassuring solid stone at his back, color blossomed into existence as Obito opened his eye, and Kakashi recognized the telltale shock of round glasses and white hair. Kabuto. Kakashi went in for the kill, his teeth bared. Lightning crackled in his palm, instantly cauterizing the wound as hard steel bit into the fleshy part of his palm, but he pushed forward, wrapping his bare hand around the blade and pulling. Kakashi heard the satisfying crack 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 as the coastal cartilage shattered under the force of his blow, and he brought his other hand to slam against bony ribs as the intruder grunted in surprise. He gave a sharp whine of surprise at it, and Kakashi snarled, grinding his fist even more firmly into blood and bone. Kakashi ignored the helpless fumble of fingers against his arm, flipping the blade in his bloody, chakra blazing hand and pressing it to the fuckface's throat. Glowing in the waves of pain and fear that rolled off Kabuto, Kakashi said, "Hello," adding, "That's very rude of you," dropping in unannounced. Kakashi scowled as Kabuto whimpered, looking oddly young and vulnerable, with round glasses almost twice as big as his face. This was Kabuto, with the gray hair, the glasses, and even his chakra moving in the same way as sickly sweet and twisting in weird patterns that gave him a headache if he tried to focus on it too much. However, baby fat still clung to his cheeks, and he was not nearly as strong as Kakashi remembered. Kabuto moaned pathetically, "Please, please, please don't hurt me." Naturally, Kabuto would be 10 years younger here. When Kakashi first met the boy at the Chunin exams, he was about 12 or 13 years old, with a round face that only hinted at the hard plains it might eventually become. Why was he here, in this desolate region of the country? "Please sir, I didn't mean to." After a moment of hesitation, Kabuto opened his mouth and spit out a cloud of poisonous gas that burned Kakashi's nose and eyes. With the strength of the north wind, he blew it away and flew through a series of one-handed seals, watching with great satisfaction as the jutsu ripped mercilessly at Kabuto's skin. In a few seconds, the wind died down, leaving only a battered Kabuto with his armor ripped to pieces, leaning against the stone cave wall for support. "What are you doing here, and who the devil are you?" Uncomfortably, Kabuto gave him a flat, unreadable look that made Kakashi shiver. "We could do this one way or another," Kakashi said, directing a single lightning spark through the blade in his hand. "What do you want and how did you know I was here?" Something changed in Kabuto's face, and Kakashi wasn't sure if it was the physical threat that made him twitch. He could only speculate about the child's bizarre shemesa. Was he employed by Akatsuki or Orochimaru? And memorized every move he made by following Obito's gaze. In a gentle little boy's voice, Kabuto said, "I've been sent by a collector," which caused Kakashi's hackles to stand up and his teeth to itch. "Keep talking," said Kakashi. "He is aware of your notoriety as the copy ninja. I was dispatched to obtain your Sharingan." "You wouldn't be the first," Kakashi remarked, splattering blood on the ground with the blade in his hand. "As you can see, I still have my eye." After saying, "I am, admittedly, not your match in a physical fight," Kabuto paused and pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose slowly while carefully telegraphing his movements. "Your teammate wearing the wolf mask is currently experiencing severe internal bleeding, elevated intracranial pressure, and a basilar skull fracture. He will most likely die if he is not treated within the next 3 hours. In addition to having a developing infection that could potentially become septic, your teammate wearing the tiger mask is experiencing hypovolemic shock, which is expected to resolve within 10 hours, Kabuto grinned. I can heal them, he replied, in exchange for your Sharingan.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.